on screen.
Welcome to First Contact.
Make first contact right here. Here?
Actually, over there.
Actually, right here. I am your host, Davin Scalhorn, and my guest for this initial First Contact segment, our interview segment here on Locutors of Trek, is Andre Myette of the Graphic Histories Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Devin. It's great to be here, and it's great to hear you say your last name, so now I know how to do it from now on.
That's no problem. I get
Thanks
that
for
a
having
lot.
me. This is a real pleasure.
Cool. So you're welcome. Start off with a little interview of Andre here.
Oh yeah.
How's that sound, Andre?
Away. Yes.
All right.
Bring it
This
on.
is our diplomatic introductions here at First Contact. Andre is an artist, a podcaster, and a professional wrestler. Is that not correct, Andre?
That is correct. I'm also a trivia host,
And a trivia host,
and an actor. So yes, a lot of things, but all of those do fall into those categories for sure. I have a card that just says man. That's all right. I have a card that just says "Man About Town" with like a huge list on the back of all the things I do, and it's a gas to pass it out to people. For sure.
That gives me a lot of places to go with questions, so that's good.
That's
the
right.
longer the list, the better.
Excellent.
You join us from Truro, Nova Scotia, yes?
Correct. Yes, I am living here in the hub of Nova Scotia,
on the muddy shores of the Minas Basin.
Yeah, actually, yes, I actually live very close to the Bay of Fundy. It's like I can see it from my window. It's right there.
Very nice. Tied in or out?
Oh, it's quite in right now. Quite in, because
good.
all the land around here, like 'cause I live in an area called Old Barns, where there's like a lot of farms, and there are quite a few flooding because of all the recent rain. So like quite a few areas and big fields are just flooded right to the rim right now. So
well, we had some good rain there the other day.
Yes, indeed. Biblical. It's like 100 millimeters or something. It's like the most they've had since, I don't know, a couple decades.
My koi pond was very full.
Oh, happy koi.
Yeah, for sure. They got all this new space. So you're professional wrestling.
Yes.
Did you have a wrestling hero growing up in Truro?
Well, I grew up outside of Antigonish. I moved to Truro for school when I was 18, but I grew up in a little community called Bayfield or Afton Tracadie, that area. If you're going through, if anybody's familiar with the Nova Scotia geography, if you're passing through on your way to Port Hawkesbury or Cape Breton in that area, you kind of have to go through it from Antigonish. It's about 15 minutes from the town proper. But I grew up watching old school wrestling, of course, like stuff from the late 80s, early 90s. And I always really liked, when I was a kid, I loved the Ultimate Warrior. Like, he's far from any inspiration for me as far as character or wrestling style goes. Like, I've never emulated anything he did, but just as a kid, he was just such a larger than life sort of character. But I always was really drawn to like Macho Man and some of the bad guys, just because they're the more interesting characters. Like Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, was a huge inspiration for me growing up, and kind of on my heel wrestling character that I had for a lot of years. And as time went on and I got into like wrestling as a younger teenager and then older teenager, Kurt Angle was my number one, still is, of all time, best of all time, hands down.
Interesting. That's cool.
But a lot of love.
Did you go to the local shows as well, like to see the Beasts and the Cuban Assassins and those types of films?
I was kind of right in the cusp of when like that was fading away, and like when I was old enough to really pay attention. And like real action wrestling was coming up, which is like a lot of the guys that were in Grand Prix doing their own thing. And I wrestled with quite a few of those guys as the years went on, like Cowboy Mike Hughes and Brody Steele and Wildman Gary Williams, Trash Canyon, all those guys. So I kind of got to know them a little bit growing up. And then, of course, when I got into wrestling, I got to know them a lot better, which is pretty cool. But I have been on tour with some of the old guys, like the Cuban Assassin and Leo Burke, who's super cool. And always one of the coolest people as far as wrestling goes in this area that I've ever met. And one of the best of all time, hands down.
Oh, yeah.
Like Bret Hart. Yeah, Bret Hart references him all the time as being like one of the best that taught him a lot. So, because he went through the Stampede and did all that sort of stuff as well.
That would do it. It's a small wrestling community here in the Great White North.
Kinda. I mean, it seems to be getting bigger and bigger as with all these new outlets that are coming here and there.
That's still regional.
Yeah, that is true. Still, I do wish it was sort of the old days where there was like a territory system, where you had regional champions and you fight off for the territory champion. I mean, those are sort of the heyday of the coolness of wrestling. But with like internet and the fact that there's so many different promotions and you have to get them all to agree, which is impossible. If you've tried to organize wrestling, it's impossible. I think the chance of that ever happening again are long gone. But it's still cool. Like it's still like. To think that could happen someday is a really nice idea.
I think people would like it for sure.
I agree.
Do you have a favorite match you've done?
Oh wow, that's a good question. I'm proud of a lot of them. I've wrestled some like names, people that have been made it in the WWE or some other companies over the years, and they've always been fun matches. But a lot of the best ones I've ever had are just with actually a guy that I started with. His name's Chris Cook, the Big Picture. And because he's an innovative guy, who's always open to do different stuff and something new and exciting. We always come up with cool stories and stuff that really gets the crowd going. So I had a really good match with him here in Truro one time for IHW years ago for the Red Rock Wrestling Championship, which I'd lost to him the week before. It was a rematch for it, and it was a super, super cool match. Yeah, it was one of the, as far as stuff like that. But I guess most recently, I wrestled for UCW in Guysborough, which is very close to where I grew up, and a lot of my family came out. And there was probably like 25 people in the audience that all knew me or were related to me or something like that, or people that knew I was from the area and were there to support it as well. So on top of that, with the hundreds that were there, it was like the loudest crowd I've ever heard in my life, and just hearing like all those people chanting old school or Andre or something to that effect was pretty neat. So it was more recently, that'd be the one that stands out for me.
And you got the biggest pop of the night.
I did, yes. I'll take the credit for that one. I'm usually pretty humble.
Oh yeah,
for that one, I'll take the credit.
You're in your hometown.
That's right. That's right. I gotta get the rub when I can.
So tell the people about your art. I have some of your artwork that I picked up on your walls. Andre and I actually met sitting next to each other at a comic convention in Dartmouth.
Yeah, I remember. You had your own comic out, which is
it actually never came to fruition.
No?
I became a podcaster instead, and the artist had a baby and moved away and
had a life, went on to have real life. Yeah,
so that sort of fell apart and found my true calling.
Yeah, the stuff you're writing was great, so I'm hoping you haven't gotten away from that. I really enjoyed it. I do a lot of retro kind of style prints, a lot of like one color, a lot of tribute sort of art to like the old like t-shirt style, kind of like where it's all sort of a monochromatic sort of thing. I do kind of fluctuate between that and some traditional artwork. Like most recently, a friend of mine, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Andrew Clark. You know Andrew? He does an independent comic called Adam. He's out of Halifax.
Not with that one. I don't think I've seen the name around. I think, but
yeah, super cool guy. So he's doing a Kickstarter for his My Cat's making an appearance in your show there. I think you see him over my chair. So yeah, he's doing. He has this comic called Adam, which is sort of like a kind of I want to say paranormal investigator, just sort of like a kind of a Constantine type, but more of kind of a badass sort of character. And he was doing a Kickstarter, and he asked for me to do kind of a print that he's going to have as one of his incentives for the Kickstarter. So that's recently gone up online. There's the art for it. That's just the inks,
very nice.
The pencil and the ink. So I did the character with Frankenstein through Igor. And so you can see the colored stuff on social media. I believe I have it on the Graphic Histories Podcast Facebook page. I think it shows up there tomorrow, but it's also on his stuff for his Kickstarter. So yeah, a lot of that sort of stuff. It's very nerd based. And like if I did a lot of Marvel movies. I do like Stranger Things, stuff like that. Like just things that really appeal to me. I kind of want to do a squid. What's the one you have?
I have Agent Carter, and I also have Ant-Man.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I'm looking. I've kind of fell off. Obviously, with COVID, there's been no convention, so I haven't had as much, drive to keep doing new ones at the moment until the cons come back. I have a few that I had printed just before things had gone on that are still sitting, in my basement. So hopefully, when conventions come back, I can bust those out. I got ones for like the Joker and the Mandalorian and some other stuff like that were kind of big at the time that I was a fan of. So yeah, I'm excited to get back on the con.
Did they do a decaf this year? Were you,
Yes, but I
did
was
one?
wrestling, I believe, that weekend, so I was unable to attend, unfortunately. I know they did HowCon, but that was a very bare bones version. I was also in a play as an actor that I was on the same weekend, so I wasn't able to attend that, unfortunately. But
that was going to be my next question. Tell us about your acting.
Yeah, I do some film stuff when it's around. It's coming back around now in this area. I was in a Stephen King movie a few years ago called Big Driver that was on, I think it was a Life Network or one of those, which was surprisingly gritty and dark for a movie on the Life Network. But it was like
King, Life Network.
Yeah, I know. It's like rape and murder and revenge and all this sort of stuff. And you're like, oh, okay, And so it was actually really cool. I got to act with Maria Bello, who she shows up in a lot of stuff. She was in. Do you ever see History of Violence?
Oh yeah,
the Cronenberg movie. Yeah, she's the wife of that.
Okay.
Yeah, she was in. Yeah, one of my favorites. She was in like The Mummy 3. She took over for Rachel Weisz's character. She was in a bunch of.
Is that the Scorpion one?
No, that was the second one. The Emperor, the Dragon Emperor is the third one. The one with Jet Li as the Chinese mummy. Yeah, so she's in a lot of cool stuff. Like I'm not doing her a service to remember everything she's been in, but she's been in a lot of cool stuff. And Olympia Dukakis was in it too, who won an Oscar. So that was kind of.
I met Olympia once.
Did you?
Yeah, when I was a concierge at a hotel. She was
really. Was it when I was doing this movie? Maybe.
I was like 18. This was a long time ago.
Well, this movie is probably about 10 years ago, maybe a little less than that. 8 years ago, maybe.
Longer, way longer.
Okay, cool. Well, they did film. She did film other movies here, so she's probably here for like maybe Cloudburst or one of those other ones that would have came out probably around that time.
I think Paul Sorvino might have been here at the same time. Might have been really? With him.
Sorvino, yeah, cool.
Yeah, he was staying at the hotel too.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, no, she was super sweet, and it was cool doing a scene with her. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, that got me.
She's a nice lady. It would have been great to do a scene with her.
But it was like 3 a.m. It was the last scene of the whole movie. It was super late, and I got shot in the neck and in the head, and we had scenes together where after I was dead, I was talking to her. It's kind of like a dream sequence, and it was interesting. It was cool though, and I got to work with a friend of mine, Mark DeVoe, who's a special effects artist here locally.
I know Mark as well. He turned me into Jesus for a movie trailer once.
Oh, really? It can't be that hard. It couldn't have been.
No, it was just a bunch of scars.
It's gonna scar you up. You got to get that Jesus scar on you. So and that got me in the union, and I've done stuff here and there. In theater acting, I've always done since pretty much I moved to Toronto. It was just kind of a whim. I got involved with it and really enjoy it. So I'm actually working on about a year from now. I'm going to be doing hopefully a stage play version of Frankenstein here for Halloween. So it's kind of my plan right now. We're going to see how it goes, but I have to submit it to the board of directors for the theater group a bit to make sure it's all okay to go forward. But it's the script from the Nick Deere one that was on stage that Benedict Cumberbatch did about 10 years ago. Okay, wow. It's him and Johnny Lee Miller both did it, and it's the closest adaptation I've ever seen to the book, like the closest as far as the book goes. It's very true to the source material and pretty far removed from the like the one in that picture, the Universal Monsters version. So,
which is great, but it's not like the book.
No, it's great, but I mean, the book has all these great themes about creation and fatherhood and life and what it means to be human and why that's a conflict, the confliction between everybody with good and evil, and how the more the creature becomes human, the more he learns to hate and to be angry and mad and sad and all the things that make us human. And it's got some super deep themes that. A lot of those fun Universal movies, I love those movies, miss out on.
Well said. Did you have a favorite movie growing up? Or a couple?
I'm a huge movie person. I watch a lot of movies, and I love movies.
So do I.
Yes. And actually, it's a question I usually ask people is, what's your favorite movie? And if I haven't seen it, I'll just go watch it because it means this much to somebody. And by doing that, I've seen a lot of cool movies. I've seen a lot of really bad movies. But I don't think there's wasted experiences when it comes to movies. You take something away from it. So if I had to pick my favorite movie of all time, movies, you can pick a favorite movie critically based on, a lot of criteria, or you can pick one based on that criteria and how it made you feel or where it was in your life or that sort of stuff. So I say my favorite movie was Who Framed Roger Rabbit, because
wow.
It's a fantastic movie by itself, but it's got everything. It's a period piece. It's a mystery. It's scary. It's hilarious. There's some romance in there. It's got a buddy cop comedy kind of thing to it. Some of the humor still kills me. It's still like if I watch the movie now today, I still lose it. Judge Doom's one of the best villains of all time.
Oh, is he? Ever.
Oh,
Matt
hands
Frewer,
down.
legend.
No, it was Christopher Lloyd.
Oh, it was Christopher Lloyd, not Matt Frewer.
Matt Frewer's the other tall, skinny, bald guy.
Yeah.
Max Headroom. That's Matt Frewer.
Yeah, Max Headroom.
Yeah, I love Matt Frewer too, but no, it wasn't Lloyd.
It's been a while since I've seen it, but I had a Roger Rabbit poster on my door as a child. I love that.
Oh, excellent! Well. Yes,
it was scary.
yeah. When he melts the shoe, and when the whole spoiler alert. I guess the movie's been out for 30 something years, probably more. No, geez, when it came out, 89, 88, somewhere in there. So, but it's great. Bob Hoskins is fantastic. The cast, you got Looney Tunes interacting with Warner Brothers characters interacting with Disney characters, which at the time was unheard of. There's even like all these good. It does, like Donald Duck and Daffy, like having a piano war and all the stuff with Jessica. Like it's all really, really good. And
that's a good pick.
As far as like, if I had to say like artsy, critical, like put on my beret and my scarf film, I'd say No Country for Old Men. But
really, it's a good movie.
Yeah, I'm a big Coen Brothers fan. Everything they do is money to me.
Oh
there's few directors that have been
Fargo again recently.
Have you watched the show?
Yeah.
I haven't seen the last season, but man, I love the show.
I love that first season. That was the one with Billy Bob, right?
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
He was one of the best villains of all time in that movie, that show. And it's hard to even this, like all the seasons have been great, and I've always taken something away from each of them in a different way. But I'm a big fan of the show. So
I like in a villain where you can't quite figure out what their angle is, and that's his whole thing in that first season of that show.
But even
where's he coming from? Like, what's going on here? It's like,
and there's so many like Martin Freeman, and like there's so many good actors in it, and like the whole thing with him and Colin Hanks's character, and at the end when they finally have that final face off, and he answers the riddle he told them when they first met, and it's all so like. The Coen Brothers and like Cormac McCarthy and extension the Coen Brothers with Cormac McCarthy's material, which is No Country for Old Men. But any of that sort of stuff, like that sort of existentialist, like the bad guy almost represents like the evil in humanity, or like the shifting in what's considered evil, and how things like that movie has such a really good, like No Country for Old Men specifically does such a good job of depicting like the shift in like crime around the 80s, like when or the 70s and 80s is when things started getting more violent, and there's less respect amongst criminals, and it became more like a bloodbath, and the poor cop played by Tommy Lee Jones, who's just trying to make sense of all this insanity, and Shigar, who basically represents like death or change or some combination of the two, and this sort of complete, almost inhuman quality to him. But there's like a code, a weird code. And I don't know. It's just I could talk about it all day. It's so good. It's fantastic.
We could do another podcast.
What's your favorite movie, Devin?
Oh man. Okay. Well, same criteria you used, I guess.
Yeah, we got it for you.
Yeah. I guess for the one that makes me feel. I guess. Have you ever seen I've seen this one I don't know. This movie's relaxing to me. And I've seen it probably like 100 times. Have you ever seen Medicine Man starring Sean Connery and Lorraine Bracco?
I have not, but I've never heard. Oh, I got to watch it now. So I have to.
It's my favorite Sean Connery movie.
Really?
And he's in a lot of great
more so
movies.
than League of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
Well, I forgot about that one, but I just see him as his character in that one. I forgot it was even Sean Connery.
That movie was so bad. But no, I have not seen that movie. I love Connery as well. Actually,
so
funny.
Medicine Man, yeah. No, go ahead.
Sorry. When I think of Sean Connery, I often bring up a little known. It's like his first movie that he did for Disney back in the 70s. It was called Darby McGill and the Little People. And hardly anyone's ever heard of that movie, but I watched it a lot growing up. So it's on the Wonderful World of Disney all the time. And
we had it taped off the TV on a videotape.
Yeah,
that was a good one.
And it was a fair, like, I think it's on Disney Plus. I really want to watch it again because if I recall correctly, it was fairly disturbing. Like I remember, like there's the old man was supposed to be taken away by death at the end, and there's like
and he like fiddles a lot, right?
Yeah, yes he does, and he's always hanging out with the Leprechaun King. Brian, which is a great name for Leprechaun King. Just Brian.
What a
Like,
weird movie.
This is my mythical friend. His name is George. Like it's just such. I mean, it's Irish, so I mean, O'Brien, Brian, whatever. But it's just, yeah. And it was an interesting movie. With like you don't see a lot of movies based on leprechauns. So like in kind of a serious folklore sort of way, besides like the Warwick Davis horror movies, which are another thing. But yeah, so it's just but I mean I love the Untouchables and his Bond was great. Like anything, and Highlander, of course. I mean anything that Connery did, The Rock. I do subscribe to the theory that his character in The Rock is in fact James Bond. I think I totally
subscribe to that as well. Yeah.
I do. As little as I like,
it makes
Michael
the movie
Bay,
so much better for me.
It does. It totally does. It makes it okay for me to like a Michael Bay movie.
That's what we call headcanon here on Locutors of Trek. We're always adding things from Star Trek we like that aren't official
I like that.
to our headcanon.
I like that. I'll have to remember that. It's a good phrase.
So, and I guess I'd have to pick another one, probably Blues Brothers. I love that movie.
I just watched that for the first time about a year ago.
Really?
Yes.
It must have been.
I saw the second one when it came out, but I never saw the original one until recently. It's great, fantastic movie. And
he's my favorite Dan Aykroyd. He's just everything.
He's a straight man, which is rare for him, though.
But it's so funny. He's just like, we're on a mission from God. He's just so like serious about that. It's like we're putting the band back together.
I think one of my favorite scenes in cinematic history is when Carrie Fisher catches up to them and he's groveling and every excuse in the book he possibly can pull out as to why he never came back to her, he pulls out and warms her heart yet again. But it's just I mean, Belushi was an icon for a reason. He was fantastic. And
doesn't that scene end with him kissing her and dropping her in the mud?
Just dropping her and running and just leaving her behind again. Or that when she blows up the building and they all come out of the rubble and it's just like nothing happened. They dust themselves off and get in the car and drive off again. Like,
they're on a mission from God. It's
that's
such a
right. Good... The stuff with the nun is fantastic too. And she's like, doors are closing and yeah, exactly.
Knocks him down the staircase.
Yeah, it's so good.
But his music's really good in it too.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
But why don't you tell us about this?
Yes.
I'm a fan.
Yes, you are. You're one of my vocal fans on social media, which is nice to see. To know people out there and listening and enjoying it. It's called the Graphic History Podcast. It was my COVID project, I guess, when COVID started. It was something I was wanting to do for a while, and then when I was on lockdown, I said, "Well, no time like the present." Initially, I thought it'd be fun to do a show where I just go because all these characters are popping up in movies now that have deep and long comic book histories. So the initial core concept was, well, I'll just explain the entire comic book history of these characters that are popping up in movies, which was fun. But as time went on, I started doing, actually not even that time went on, I think it was the second episode, I did an interview episode where I had Ed Burson on, who's a comic writer, lives in Halifax. And then I kind of realized that I really much more enjoyed the interview portion of it. And like, it was almost a slog to come up, to pile through mountains of continuity, which is fun. And I do enjoy it. But I feel like I felt like my talents are better used, like talking to people and doing this sort of thing. So I kind of shelved the comic book history side of it and just stuck with the interviews only. So now it's a bi-weekly show, and hopefully I'll be busy enough that I can make it a weekly show or maybe even a twice a week show. But yeah, I've always been a big fan of like Mark Maron's podcast, WTF. And I kind of like the idea of taking that format, shifting it a little bit and focusing on like nerdy comic book. At first it was comic books, but it's sort of anything that's in the nerd culture, actors, special effects. I had Mark on the show, special effects artists, people that do podcasts themselves, writers, artists, anything like that. I recently had some a bunch of Canadian people on it, which was cool. So an upcoming episode that just came on, I had Jack Briglio, and the next episode is Jay Torres, who does quite a few comics and worked for quite a few of the big companies. So, and it's a Canadian guy with some interesting stories. He has an interesting connection to Drake, which is fun to talk about. So he works on a graphic. Sorry, go ahead.
You scrapped the comic stuff entirely. You're just doing interviews entirely on that show.
Yes, yeah. So I kind of thought, well, and also I would find on social media, I hit like a YouTube ad for like Screen Rant or one of those sites that are like, find out everything you need to know about Hawkeye, and like whoever the villain is in the new Hawkeye show that came out today, in like 10 minutes. And I'm like, well, these guys, and they have this great production of it with all this stuff. And I'm like, me just kind of making some jokes through continuity for half an hour, I don't know, can can really compete with this sort of thing. So I figured I'd just, focus on the interviews.
I'm trying to channel you right now because you're like a fine interviewer, and
Oh, thanks, man.
this is my first go at it. So I'm trying
I
to
can
channel
talk a
my
lot, so
Andre
feel free.
Myette right now.
Yeah, you could be me. Sure, go for it.
Speaking of Mark, he made those beautiful gremlins you have in the background there, didn't he?
Actually, no, he made.
Oh, didn't he?
Those ones are NECA models. I don't know if I can do this without screwing everything
Oh,
up.
he made you a gremlin though, right?
He did this
yeah,
one.
Yeah,
that one's from a model kit from I think it was Taiwan or something, and this is Spike from Gremlins 2. The other ones are NECA replicas of the puppets that were used in the filming of the show, of the movies themselves. There's the Flasher one from 1, and there's a regular Gremlin and Stripe, and you can see his white mohawk is there. Also, I have some Mogwais back there too. There's Stripe when he's a Mogwai, and Gizmo.
Gotta have a Giz.
You gotta have a Gizmo. You got it. He's right by Baby Yoda. You can kind of make a Baby Yoda back there. Or
So,
Grogu, whatever his name is.
We have a bit of a Herculean task ahead of us.
We do indeed.
We're going to try to review these 9 stories from 15 comic books from Paramount Marvel from 1997.
Yes, I was very impressed that it was a Marvel book. I forgot because I remember there was an imprint called Malibu that did a lot of these Star Trek comics back then.
Yeah.
And I thought they were Malibu books until I was reading them, and I was reading the PDFs, and then came across all the ads that I remembered distinctly from Marvel Comics in that time period.
Most of the ones I have are Malibu for sure, which I will say, opening thoughts, I guess, here. Oh, first, did you like it?
Yes, actually, yeah. I was surprised how much it reminded me of like lost episodes of the show. You know what I mean? Like I felt like I was kind of watching the show still, because I rewatched it maybe 4 years ago. I watched all of Deep Space Nine again because it is my favorite Star Trek show. So quite a few. I mean, obviously they fall into some of the pitfalls that comics do, where you have to hit certain idioms or do things a certain way. But yeah, like the vibe felt very like the lived-in world of Deep Space Nine. So yeah, I did enjoy them.
Bit of increased action just so you can get those shots and things because it's a comic book.
Yeah, there's some stuff, and we'll get to it, I guess, when we go through each issue. But there's some stuff in it that I was like, well, this would have been cool if they actually had shown me this live. So
well, that brings us to my rating system here that I've kind of come up with. So we have A, would have made a great episode of the show. B, would have made a good B plot for an episode of the show. C, good story for a comic. Or F, crashed instead of landed. Oh, that word was supposed to be of, but it says on. So crashed instead on landed.
Crash on landed. Yeah, or crash when it landed. That makes sense.
So that's how we're gonna go. And but yeah, like you were saying though, it felt kind of like the show. And I have some other DS9 and some TNG comics and stuff too. And to me, this one felt the most kind of true to character and true to the feel of the show. And I was wondering if that has something to do with the Paramount logo on it. If they had more involvement in the creation of this particular comic, I don't know. But
I wonder, because
I wouldn't be surprised.
No, in Star Trek, Roddenberry was, I think, gone at this point, but Star Trek was always sort of very heavily guarded in it. Like they always had people that were kind of monitoring the continuity, making sure things worked within everything they'd set up, especially between Deep Space Nine and some of the fibers from Next Generation that they weaved into it and kind of wrapped up, like the storylines with oh god, I'm blanking on him, the crazy-eyed Cleon. That was the Gowron, yes. And of course, how could I forget Gowron? And the Cardassians and Bajor and all that sort of stuff. Even elevating the Ferengis and kind of making some reference to how they used to be back in the Next Generation. So that sort of stuff. But yeah, I wonder, because they always were very careful to keep their brand the way it was. And I know Deep Space Nine itself was quite a departure from what they'd done. I know Roddenberry never wanted there to depict war in a Star Trek show. And it's like after he died, the floodgates were open and they're like, let's do it now. He's gone,
and he didn't want interpersonal conflict even between the crew.
Which
so essential for storytelling.
It's kind of strange how you think, look at the original show. It's great, but all the drama really comes from wherever they go. Like each planet has its own drama built in stuff. But I mean, there was like Spock and McCoy are always at each other's throats, kind of. Not really throats per se. One was more at the other throat than the other, but there were a bit of that. But the fact that you would want to do shows that would last seasons and seasons with not really any arguments or love triangles or anything between the cast. It's like kind of nuts. Like imagine like just going into a boardroom or with any kind of artistic type people and being like, we're gonna do a show. It's people that work in it's like The Office, and it's really just going to focus on the paper. We're not going to talk about the relationships or there's not going to be any love triangles, and no one really likes anybody in that sort of way. They just have a real professional relationship and just keeping it all above board. That's what we're doing.
But the counselor should have 3 boobs, I think.
Yes, of course. Well, we need that, of course.
Yeah, for storytelling.
For story, yeah. I mean, we got to give him something.
So, look, this is the candy people that work with. They're going to turn this into a story. Yeah. All right, so let's go get into it then, shall we? So, story 1, which is issues 1 and 2. So we've got here. Issue
you have
1.
all the individual issues because I read them through the PDF.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Oh, nice, excellent.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So, it's kind of why I wanted to review them. Just
they're great.
Make use of everything around. That's Star Trek. I have segments about HeroClix because I have Star Trek HeroClix. So it's like whatever Star Trek there is, let's make a segment out of it. All right, so I'll try a review here and try to yada yada if I get too long winded here, and of course, jump in whenever you want.
Of course.
Okay, so Judgment Day, Part 1. Sisko, Worf, and Bashir returning from medical mission. The Jem'Hadar are chasing unknown aliens through the wormhole, who turn out to be an aquatic-looking species called the Amaralan. An energy field follows them out of the wormhole and kind of persists once they're through. DS9 tries to help the Amaralan, and DS9 gets pulled towards the wormhole from this energy force. And they try to use the same trick Chief used in the first episode of DS9 when he moved the station.
Nice throwback, yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. To stop them from going towards the wormhole and from stopping them from falling apart, basically. But Bajorans start freaking out because the station isn't there to protect Bajor, because it's moving away from Bajor. The Amaralan first officer wants to talk to Sisko. And so they set up a meeting. The station is in one piece, more or less, but on life support. And they are now on the other side of the wormhole. That's pretty much the first issue. It was all.
Was Sisko not on the ship at the time? Was he there? Or am I getting that confused with the other storylines? I thought they were off on the Defiant.
On the ship. Yeah, Sisko was. Yeah, they were returning from a medical mission. So
right,
at the start,
because when they get back, the ship is gone, or the DS9 is gone because it's gone through.
Yeah.
The wormhole.
Yeah, exactly. So they're caught on the opposite sides of the wormhole. That's a big story point for sure.
Yes,
as well.
I love the idea that like the station is the one thing that's just holding the Cardassians at bay, or like it's just like the one thing in the door, and the second it's gone, it's like mice. They all just kind of scour in.
Yeah.
One thing I thought was interesting in this was, so I believe, I mean, this comes in the second issue, but they named the thing the Firewind. I think the energy.
Yeah, Firewind.
Which never shows up again in the series. It's really like teased that it's some big thing that's going to come back or play into the series again, but they never got around to it.
The only thing I thought about that is they mentioned that it could be like a manifestation of some other sort of energy source. So I was just wondering if like maybe it was some sort of manifestation of the Pa Wraith or something like that potentially.
That's very possible because that did play into things later. The aliens they encounter, have they never been in Star Trek before? Were they an original race created for this?
Unless it's in an obscure episode of the 70s animated series. I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Which is interesting.
I'm a little less familiar of that series, but
the one thing I find fun about this particular issue, quite a few things. Like I mentioned earlier, some things I see in the series that I was like, man, that would have been cool to kind of see in real life. Was when they're trying to struggle to not go through the wormhole. One of the pylons just breaks off. It's just like floating away in space. I'm like, that's a cool visual because like the station's always been in a lot of trouble before, but I don't remember seeing that in it. Maybe it did happen, but if it did, I don't remember seeing it visually in the series.
Oh, I don't think it is.
I don't think so either. Too. It's it's especially after like the Cardassians took it back in season 6 or 7 at the end. So showing it breaking apart was actually pretty cool, and the fact they've never done that in the live action show I thought was interesting. because it was a
Very
neat
comic
visual.
book visual, but would have been great on the show.
Yeah, for sure.
And just the idea of, as it says, is DS9 being sucked through the wormhole. That's an interesting concept that could have been
Also
entered into the
something
show.
they never did in the show either, right? You'd think that would play into it a little bit.
Just, a fleet of Jem'Hadar waiting for them on the other side.
Yeah. Well, they always like it was sort of innocuous on the show as to how exactly the wormhole, like when you came out the other side in the Gamma Quadrant, like or is it Delta Quadrant? Sorry, Delta Quadrant. You like Gamma. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up with the Voyager. Gamma Quadrant. So you would because sometimes they just pass through it and there'd be no trouble. Sometimes they'd pass through it and there'd be stuff waiting on the other side. It was always sort of like what was the area outside of the other side like? That was never really fleshed out.
They explore a couple of the planets there. Like they left Kai Opaka on that one planet that I think is pretty close to the wormhole exit. But all right. Anything else before I move on to issue 2 here?
One thing I do like about comic book tropes is, and it's the same sort of thing that happens in kids shows, specifically the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, is every time there's some kind of a giant battle, like on DS9, things are blowing up, things are caving in, people are like, the holes are ripping open in the station that are getting closed, and every once in a while they'll just cut to like Odo or someone being like, "Thank God we got everybody out of that section," or like, Thank good thing those shields kicked in. Like they constantly made a point of noting that no one died, even though, like the same with Power Rangers. They're knocking through 6 buildings per fight. I don't know how Angel Grove is still standing, but at the end of every episode, you'll see some news report where, like, just in the background, where someone's like, "Thankfully, those buildings were evacuated before," or whatever. It's like they just have to remind you that no one died, because it gets too grim if you think about the level of destruction that would have actually occurred if this really happened. Yeah. So I just got a huge kick out of that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do specifically mention that, like, they got everyone out of that pile
several times. Yeah, Odo mentions it a couple times, and I just think it's funny that they need to just remind us that no one died. Like, it really matters. Like, if some not nameless people died, like, how would we know? It's like, janitor number 2 died. It's like, not janitor number 2. You can't kill him off in a comic.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about these comics too, is they do seem to try not to step on the toes of the show.
Yes, they tread a very fine line.
Or like at the end of the comic, they just kind of tie it up neatly for the show.
Every comic from that time period, like the X-Files comics, any of those, they always just tell a story in the world, and don't make any big waves, because you have to answer to the masters at the film studio.
But this series has quite a few nods and things that kind of could carry forward, so it does have a lot of interesting things.
Yeah, you can tell they're fans of the show for sure. So not just journeyman writers, people that actually watch it.
Yeah. Judgment Day Part 2. DS9 is missing a pylon, as we've discussed, and Chief is doing repairs. I don't know how you repair a missing pylon, but
carefully.
Like only the Chief can.
Yes.
Roll up your sleeves. He always has his sleeves rolled up.
That's right.
Kira, Dax, and Odo are trying to figure out what's going on. The Amaralan tells Cisco about the Firewind, an ancient god force that returns to wipe out evil. And Amaralan ship is threatening DS9. These Amaralans act as they're like rebel subduers for the Jem'Hadar. And they had to subdue some of their own people under orders from the Jem'Hadar, and the Jem'Hadar said they were insufficiently harsh, even though they felt they were being completely merciless and felt bad. So they were going to be punished by the Jem'Hadar, so they're fleeing essentially instead of continuing on with the Dominion, which is pretty crazy. We didn't hear a lot about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's an interesting take on that, because you didn't really hear a lot about the other races that were involved with the Dominions. Mostly just the Jem'Hadar and the founders.
But for sure they would do that. Just subjugate them.
The Wayu and the Vorta and those guys. But
gotta love Wayu.
Gotta love Wayu.
All 7 of them.
Yeah, that's true. Jeffrey Combs is still the man. Reanimator Time, one of my favorite movies. So it's a great movie.
But these rebels fear their god forces more than they fear the founders. They made that very clear. So they're very afraid of this Firewind. Kira is negotiating with the Amaralan commander, and Kira offers to let him inspect DS9, because they think DS9 is a giant super weapon, because it kind of looks like a giant super weapon.
It sure does.
Yeah. It's like more intimidating than the Death Star. It looks like it's going to focus energy at the top of the pylon.
I know, and they never really do that. They shoot out of the pylon sometimes, but the idea that they never really did some focus in the center always bothered me because it looks so much like it should, you know.
Yeah, I guess they're docking point
I
ports
guess,
up there,
but it just I don't know. It always
still.
looked like it should.
They're still pretty cool torpedo launchers, I guess, those pylons. But yeah. So yeah, they're gonna let the guy come on and inspect DS9, but they want Odo as a hostage to
Right.
make sure
Because
everyone
he's
gets
a
their people
founder.
back.
And they think they
and
can
he's a
use him for
founder.
leverage. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. They don't say that part, but that's totally
Yes, that comes up later.
And they put Odo behind a force field, and he just refuses to talk to them. So the radiation levels are too high in the wormhole because of the fire wind, and that's why the Defiant's stuck on the other side, which I thought was pretty interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
but they're going to go for it anyway. They're just like, because Worf came up with this new temporary shield boost.
I was gonna mention that.
Yeah.
How does Worf do that? Like why is Worf the one who happens to know it? Like he was the security officer, wasn't he? Like he's like, all right, I got this great technological shield boost. That's like, I guess it's like
he knows weapons, I guess, and shields because of
suppose.
security all those years. But
it kind of
it's a
felt
good
a little
point.
bit like a Goodwill Hunting, you know, when the janitor just turns out to be a super genius and just, you know, knows everything. It's like it's just Worf's like, oh yeah, I've been
Worf
working
knows
on this
shields.
shield boost and this will get us through. It's like, why does Worf know this?
Good thing
Seemed very
Worf's here.
Deus
He's
Ex
great at
Machina-y.
shields.
Yeah, he's well known for crazy old shield Worf. He's always doing stuff. with
Old
shield.
Shieldy Worf, they call him.
Shieldy
Yeah, that's
Worf,
pretty funny.
shielding it up.
Actually, I think he's strategic operations officer on the.
Right, I guess he was security on the Enterprise, but it never, at no point in the series do you ever see anything that would indicate that this is what he like, that he would be the expert in this, which I just found very seemed off brand to have Worf being like, oh yeah, here I've been working on the shield thing.
I guess Chief wasn't on the boat with them, or was he? No, he's not. He's
back
he's repairing the pylon.
He's repairing that missing pylon. Making it a silly putty or something and stick back up.
Oh yeah, but a little added drama. They have patients like that are dying on the
right from the fire wind attack earlier.
Oh yeah, or from where they were coming from at the start. I believe,
the other
way back from
sorry.
And those patients are dying, so they need to get to Deep Space Nine for their facilities.
Right.
So a little extra drama there, and that's why they're forcing their way through with Worf's shield thing. Right. Funny thing is, though, it still takes them 2 tries. Like they get quite a ways in there, and he's like, turn back. But then it doesn't explain why it worked the second time.
No. And it also seems like kind of the stuff that you put in a show to pad out the running time. You know, like, we got halfway there, we had to go back, and then we fixed it and came back. It's like, why do you need to do that? Why don't you just say we got it there the first time? It seems odd that nothing came of it. Yeah, I guess we gave too much credit to old Shieldy Worf.
Guess so. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
2 Jem'Hadar fighters they do get through, and 2 Jem'Hadar fighters are speeding towards DS9 as well, and they're going to get there before the Defiant. So, that's right. Well, okay, I skipped over a part here for sure. Mm-hmm. So,
the whole thing with Odo.
Yeah. So, well, Dax and Kira are playing baseball, and Dax has a plan to use the carrot with the expendable Amarallan. See, that's what's happened here. They send over the inspector. Then once he does the inspection and gets back to the captain, they're just like, cool, we don't care about you. We're keeping Odo, and they can do whatever they want with you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I forgot about that guy. These Amarallans are kind of jerks.
It's like the trope in all of those where they're like, you know, they send over a nobody that they're like, all right, you guys can kill this guy. We don't care. And then that guy ends up being very useful in helping our guys, like, you know, go for it. When he's like, oh, what? They're going to just throw me away? Well, I'll screw them. I'll help you now. And then it works out in their favor. Like, happens every time. The bad guys always shoot themselves in the foot. And I had a question about the baseball.
Well, they're bad guys.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, the baseball thing.
So, if I recall correctly, they didn't really like Kira's like throwing like hitting really good balls and Dax like, oh, I see Cisco is teaching us and stuff. If I recall correctly, when they had the baseball episode of DS9 when they played the Vulcans, Kira was terrible and didn't really know anything about baseball. And also that took place after Jadzia had died and there was Ezri Dax. So like that was the timeline didn't really line up for that, which I thought was interesting. If I get my prize tomorrow.
True. Kira wasn't the worst on the team. No, I don't know that we. Yeah, no, she was bad. She was bad.
I don't remember,
but
them
she wasn't. Dax was pitching against her in this scene, and not the Vulcans. Maybe that
right.
had something
And I don't
to do with
remember
it.
if they'd recalled that she had played before at all. But I just remember her not having any experience really with baseball. In any way.
No, that's
So.
okay. That's a good one. That's a good catch.
Maybe, but
Maybe
stuck out to me anyways, being odd.
So back on the Amaral ship with Odo, there's a mutiny because this expendable inspector has friends. Yeah. And that's why they do the mutiny. They're like, you can't just make us expendable, which I thought was great, actually. That was a nice moment.
It's like they did the worst possible thing they could have done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They sent off the guy that everybody loves as expendable. All his friends team up, mutiny the ship. The guy they sent off helps the other guys to get back at them and just totally obliterates them.
That's why he sent him, because he was too liked and it made the captain annoyed. He's jealous.
Yeah, actually.
Good old friendly guy here.
Oh, happy-go-lucky over there. We don't want that guy getting too much power. Let's send him over to the weapon. One thing I thought was interesting about this is how okay Odo is with all this murder happening around him, because it's like people getting shot left and right and just dead, and Odo's like, all right, yeah, he's just stepping over them and just like, because Star Trek's always made a pretty big point of like trying to do the greater good or spare life if you can, even when people get killed. It's usually by their own hand or their own mistake. It's rare that like an officer, or unless they're Cleons, just murder somebody and that's it. So I
he's not Starfleet, as he says.
That is true. He does bring that up constantly.
And he just likes order, which I guess with the less people, if half of them are murdered, that's a more orderly environment.
It's according to Odo, very Thanos way to look at it.
Odo's a little bit Thanos, isn't he?
Thanos. Odo and Thanos, same guy.
It's the same guy. He's a shapeshifter. He
just became Thanos. There's some headcanon for you. Boom.
Oh yeah, I'm adding that one in. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, Odo snaps out the universe.
Trek. Yeah, go over and just fold over to each other.
So they let Odo out, and they agree to help Deep Space Nine. So they go over to Deep Space Nine, and Odo just acts like it was his plan all along, and that's why he's free and everything. He's just like, "Yeah, I knew it. Like I said all along, I'll go over there and it'll be fine, and all because of me."
Yeah, Odo's the glue.
Just a freak mutiny.
He's still the glue.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So there's a ship overloading, because one of the saboteurs. Was it? How was it? Yeah, there's a ship overloading in the station because they had a saboteur, one of the Amaralans on board. Because one of the crew of the supposedly mutineers was just playing both sides like the whole time.
Yeah, it's pretty complicated stuff going on for this first arc to introduce you to these Star Trek comics. So.
It's true. It's why it kind of felt more like a TV episode than a comic book almost. So the Jem'Hadar fighters are speeding towards DS9, and Dax has a plan to use the overloading ship to take out the Jem'Hadar fighters. It works. That's big explosions. And,
which also was another seemed off brand to me, that they lure the Jem'Hadar into a trap, don't give them any chance to really survive, and just blow them up. Like, I get that it's wartime, and maybe I guess that's why things are forgivable. But
I guess so.
It does seem odd that they don't give them any warning. They literally lure them in with the trap and then blow them up.
True. Yeah. Because they had like some signal.
Yes.
On the shuttle. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. They basically made a mine, sent them into, and then blew it up in front of them.
So then the Defiant gets there, and that's the end of the episode pretty well. It's just Sisko and Dax pondering what the Firewind is at the end.
Yes, with some gentle inference that it will be back someday, or that it might return, never to return.
Which is what gave me the Pares vibes.
Yeah, I could see that, but I don't think the writers had that in mind. I feel as though they probably did. If that series had continued beyond issue 15, it probably would have came back eventually. But
so that's the first story, Judgment Day.
Yeah.
How would you grade that one?
So B is a B. Yeah, B is a B plot, right? A is a good episode. Yeah. C is fine comic, and D is garbage.
And F is F. It's an F, but
F.
that's
right.
fine.
Yeah.
Maybe D's nicer.
Yeah. I
Gee,
know. I
do
noticed
better next time.
I know the drop off went from like an okay comic to just garbage. It's like there's nothing.
Well, I figured there was like 3 categories of it's good, and
Yeah.
it wasn't good.
That's fair. If it's not good, it's not good. I'd say it'd be a good episode of the show for sure. It's definitely one of those big episodes where like there's not a lot of character building, but just a lot of things going on to kind of advance the war with the Dominion. So yeah, I give it an A. I'd say it's a solid A. I don't think it could be a B plot because there's too much going on for it to, I don't know what else would be happening. What was the A plot on top of all this stuff?
Well, as far as the B grade, I was a little more nuanced to that. I was thinking too, because some of these are too big for a B plot, but say you enjoyed one element of a story and not so much the other, then it could be a B. It's like I would take the part I liked to make that a B plot, discard the rest type of thing.
Yeah, okay. Well, if we're following that criteria, I'd say B then.
Yeah. Okay.
I would go with B.
What would you just get rid of the whole Defiant being on the other side thing and just kind of have it a
Well,
DS9
I like
through
that. I think some of the like any kind of fiction,
Firewind kind of stuff.
Yeah, like that was interesting too. The idea the series does go into a lot of stuff with the wormhole aliens, the prophets, and the paw race, and did feel like kind of like that. It seems odd to throw another cosmic god thing that's seems to be a force of nature more than actual thinking thing. I mean, it kind of is, but it's not. So yeah, I think it might muddy it to introduce that into the core story. But as far as like the pulling it through the wormhole, like that was interesting enough that I think it would have been cool to see on a show.
I gave it an A, but it was also the first one I graded, and I think you convinced me there, and I think I'm going to actually change that to a B because I agree they didn't need the Firewind.
Yeah. I mean, introducing this new race of aliens is interesting, but they didn't really add much of a dynamic to it. Like, it's not like there was some new way to look at the Dominion that wasn't there before. It's just another Dominion race that, they seem okay because some of them defected in and they were nice people. But, the Jem'Hadar did that too. So, it's not necessarily a unique idea either.
Yeah. Like, I would... Yeah, I agree. I thought maybe like the station being sucked the wormhole might be too big for a B plot, but you could make that work. And it didn't need to be as heavy with filler as it kind of was.
Yeah. Well, they got to fill 22-ish pages.
That's true.
Oh, yeah. Story 2. This
is the Cancer Within.
The pandemic one.
Yep.
I thought a lot of parallels to COVID in this that I'm going to make fun of as we go along, but you feel free to give us
perfectly fine. Fire those out whenever necessary.
All right.
All right. A listed as missing Starfleet shuttle comes out of the Badlands. So with most missing for Starfleet vessels, they assume it's the Maquis, or at least Kira does, of course. They detect 6 biosignatures, but only 2 life signs. And indeed, there are dead aboard. Wech Duj, Worf says, which means death ship. And just then, them and Kira and another officer are infected by the mysterious plague. The 2 survivors are covered in sores and begging for help and sent to quarantine. The plague is spreading around the station, and Julian suspects it is genetically engineered. But one Bajoran officer seemed to be immune to the whole thing. And he noticed that it only seemed to affect humans and Bajorans. So it didn't get Worf. Meanwhile, in the Badlands, there was a group of Maquis tampering with a virus to make it work only on Cardassians so they can force them off their worlds. But it mutated and infected their entire colony. And here we have a big cameo. Dr. Pulaski is there.
Which I wanted to ask you about because I didn't watch The Next Generation that much.
So
I'm assuming that's where she's from.
She replaced Dr. Crusher for an entire season.
Okay. I did watch like scattered stuff here and there, but I don't have as well a grasp on the entirety of it as I do of The Next Generation or Deep Space Nine. So, all right, that is a big cameo.
Yeah, she was like Lady Bones. She basically was the same personality as Bones.
Oh,
so
I have to watch this.
But maybe a little meaner. I don't know. She was
I like a meaner Lady Bones.
Yeah,
I'm down for that.
Yeah. So she's there, and her daughter is working with the Maquis. So that's why she's there. She's trying to cure the people, but also get her daughter out of this situation. Some Maquis aboard DS9 blow up that shuttle, which knocks out DS9's external power coupling. The power loss is creating potentially fatal problems in the infirmary because there's people dying of this plague all over the place now. It's spreading through the ship. Worf and Odo are looking for the Maquis saboteurs, and that's funny because they find them and then they kick the crap out of them like we do not see in the show. Both Worf and Odo are not.
It's like a two-page fight where they just like beat the living hell out of them. Like it's impressive. It's where like these sort of things have to match. They have to fit comic book stuff. So it's like we need to have a fight. It needs to be this big, thing to keep people interested. So we just have this 2-page fight where Odo and Worf beat the holy hell. And, like it's not even like the normal the double axe handle kind of hit. They're like karate chopping to the throat and beating the living hell out of everybody.
Worf chops that one guy in the throat and blood goes flying everywhere. And it's crazy. But it's a crazy scene. They're both so happy with themselves and like enjoying their little team up. They're like, we'd never get away with this if like anybody else but maybe Kira was here.
Nobody's watching. We can kill these guys.
So
turn your body cam off. Let's do this.
So that was a bit crazy.
Yeah.
Chief does some engineering heroics on a spacewalk with him and his repair crew, but it kind of goes wrong, and he has to save their lives with a really O'Brien.
Yeah, I want to bring that up too. It was another one of those we did it, then we didn't do it, and we had to go back inside, get new space suits, and then come out and do it again. It just seemed like extra padding that wasn't really necessary.
Yeah, that one did. Worf interrogates the prisoners. And they're all like, "We're not going to talk." Worf's just like, he. Like, okay, we'll see here in about 10 minutes or whatever.
Yeah, you're Starfleet. You can't torture people. Like, what's he going to do?
You're not supposed to bloody neck chop people either.
Yeah,
so Worf's having a time.
He's off safari.
So Pulaski finds out the truth and goes to contact Starfleet, but finds her daughter infected by the virus. And that's the end of that issue. Oh, which I didn't put it up. That was the second issue, the one of the conclusion of the last story.
You get Odo front and center in that one.
Yep. And so now we have a little Bashir action there.
So the part that killed me too, I found in this maybe is it this one or is it the next series? I think it's the next series. Yes, that's the later. But this one had a very blue collar vibe, like all of the grunts that are like the engineers and like the mechanics are like the ones that go into space to make the save, and then like the thing happens where they have to go back in and get more air or whatever. They like do this slingshot maneuver to survive when they think they're stranded. Then they go back out to finish the job, and there's even this big rallying cry where they're like, "We're gonna finish the job," and like a big caps as like the blue collar workers come in to like really get it home, which I thought was very interesting. Sort of because
they're all they're all attached by a rope and like going towards the Defiant, and it's like pretty epic.
It kind of reminded me of those like old World War II propaganda things where it's like, Rosie the Riveter will get the job done sort of thing.
Oh,
a little bit, which I thought was interesting.
Bit of a Lower Decks feel if you know that episode of TNG or perhaps the show, the cartoon.
Yes, I do know the cartoon. I've watched all of it.
Yeah, they like to highlight the grunts every now and then.
That's true. I do like because the Justice League Unlimited did an episode like that where there's some big cosmic battle going on over here, and it's really just focusing on like Booster Gold and a couple other characters that are doing crowd like saving civilians who find there's a B story that they stumble upon and save the world in their own way. Buffy did it too. Like it's neat when they do those sort of shows. So there's something massive going on over here that's not really the focus. It's a smaller story that's equally as important over there. I did love. There's a few COVID sort of correlations to me that I thought was funny. There's even a line where someone says like, I'm doing my own research on this. It's like, I think there's actually a line in there that says that, which made me laugh hysterically because I'm like, this comic came out, 98?
7. Yeah.
7. So I'm like, just the fact that they're like, so far ahead of the curve on this. The guy literally says something along the lines of, I'm doing my own research or like, I don't need these studies. I've done my own research on the subject, which just made me laugh hysterically. Like I was like, that's good.
I heard on Facebook this thing doesn't even work on Maquis.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, awful. And I mean, it's funny because the conspiracy being accurate that there actually is a genetically modified virus that does target a certain type of person or is supposed to, does play kind of into all that sort of paranoia and insanity, which I thought was funny. But that do my own research line killed me. I was like, that's hilarious.
That is a great line. I can't believe I didn't.
Yeah.
The baby must have been distracting me at that.
Oh, well, babies will do that.
Yeah. So that brings us to issue 4, The Cancer Within, part 2.
Which
Bashir wants to go to
Jake being in the med bay. They're just like,
Yeah,
oh, Jake's
Jake's got it
infected.
now.
They didn't mention it at all in the last episode. They just start this one with being like, Jake's super sick and might die.
Yeah, Cisco's like, this really sucks. Jake's gonna die.
this really bites, man. You know. Bag virus.
Bashir wants to go to Pulaski because she did contact them and they got the message, but they can't prove that it was her. And so Cisco's like, I don't know, like we don't even know if it was her, and we kind of need you here treating this plague. But he eventually agrees, and Dax and Miles and Worf go with him. And they take a runabout into the Badlands, and they get attacked. But Miles does some fancy flying through an asteroid field to get away. So this is all about Miles. See, I like this because there's only 2 kinds of Miles episodes. There's like the O'Brien Must Suffer episodes, and then there's the Miles is like can do anything, and he's like the best everyday guy.
Especially when they're like, we need someone to infiltrate the Orion Syndicate. Who can we get? Let's get the mechanic from Deep Space Nine. He's the only one we can use. It's just like I get kicks out of those episodes. They're great episodes, but it's always like the rationale is always really fun.
Yeah, we talked about that on the podcast one time on Locutors of Trek. Listen to us where you get your podcast. And the only thing we could figure is because he's a non-commissioned officer that maybe he's not on whatever lists of Starfleet officers that the Orions whatever maybe have.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. But there's got to be
the only thing we could think of.
I mean, they have
a lot of others.
They have a whole shadow, Section 13 or whatever. They have a whole shadow group of government agents. You can't use any of those guys. Like, nope.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that exactly what their job is at Section 31?
Yeah, it's their whole job.
Yeah. Sadler was busy. It's fine. He's good. He played it well. I liked his character slump.
Yeah, I liked him too.
So, oh yes, that's right. Dax is just like, well, too bad, Worf. Dabu Kaludi Yisuf, which means when threatened, fight. That's a Klingon phrase. Mm-hmm. They beam Pulaski aboard, and she has the scientists in stasis. And then Admiral Nechayev shows up just to be Nechayev for like a page. Mm-hmm. Do you remember her from TNG at all? She
vaguely
shows up to hassle captains. She hassles Picard. She hassles Cisco, and that's all she does. She just like Cisco, like do better. Bye. Nechayev out.
You need that hard ass chief. From like a trope from old cop shows. That's always banging the desk and demanding your badge. Turning your gun,
exactly who she is.
That's what she is. Yep. That's the role she serves.
Oh, she does it so well too. Mm-hmm. The away team lands on the Maquis base and immediately end up in a big old fist fight. Yeah, but they subdue their attackers. They've got some good fighters among them, mostly just Worf and Kira.
Yeah, no blood splurts this time.
or no, Worf and Dax, I guess it is.
Yeah,
Kira. Yeah. The doctors try and find a cure, and which is interesting that they say in the heart of the first germ warfare facility the Federation has seen in centuries.
Yes. Yeah.
So clearly, they don't have to deal with this problem very often,
which seems crazy to me.
Me too. Hundreds of years.
Yeah.
The Romulans don't play with that.
Apparently not anywhere the Federation has come across it. So.
I thought that one stuck out to me too. Mm-hmm. The Defiant streaks toward the Maquis base, but are intercepted by Maquis raiders using stolen Starfleet weapons. The Defiant fights through to the base. Pulaski does find a cure, and back at Deep Space Nine, Jake and Kira are dying. Pulaski inoculates her daughter and the scientists, and it seems to work. Communications between
fast. That all came super fast. They're like, they're just like,
there for 10 minutes, and they're like, we got it.
It's like this virus that wiped out everybody literally within 10 minutes. They're like, oh, we have the answer. Here it is. It's the cure. We're all good.
Good old genetically enhanced Julian.
That's right. It seemed like Pulaski was kind of the one that pulled it out, though, which I thought was odd.
Yeah,
considering
she'd been there working on it for quite a while.
But, that's true.
Communications between the Defiant and the base are jammed, but Cisco lets them know that they are out there because he just gets everything to fire at him. They're like, "What's
Yeah.
all that firing?" They're like, "Oh, Cisco must be here." That's
Makes
pretty
sense.
funny.
He's
Yeah.
my favorite captain for that reason.
Yeah, he's mine too. Then the Maquis break down the door, and is that the end?
No, that's the end of the story. They wrap up the virus, and then because the Maquis they escape them and they get back, and then there's some reference to the evil. There's like a shadow group that they reference.
Yes,
That's pulling the strings to all these sort of things.
There's
and
a super ominous scene at the end.
Yeah, which is another comic trope where there are all these shadows, and then and someone even says, I wrote down this quote: "Nothing will stand in the way of the shadow group." Like, who talks like that? Even people in shadow groups don't talk like that. You don't stand around and be like, "They'll never know what we pulled off in our secret shadow group." Like, it's just so funny. Like, it's another one of those comic tropes. It is a holdover from the 90s and the 80s and the 70s. It's like the 90s was sort of transition when they started getting into slightly more realistic. I mean, as realistic as you can get with superheroes and stuff, but slightly more realistic dialogue and that sort of stuff. But this is sort of right in the middle where you're getting lines like that are just hilarious.
You're like, who's the shadowy group? And then they call themselves the shadow group.
Exactly. Little on the nose there. Your shadow group might want to invest in a little bit of branding, maybe some, maybe a brand guideline.
I like to think that was an intentional joke. But
I guess. Who's it on? Us, the reader?
I guess so.
I guess. You idiots are reading this. Enjoy.
So how would you grade this one? The Cancer Within.
Like a B. Yeah, B is like a B story. C is an okay comic, right? I guess C. I guess. Like I feel like they've done similar things to this on the show enough that this wouldn't have really fit in a way to have been anything really different. I mean, they do. The comic series itself seems to focus on the Maquis a lot more than the show did. The Maquis are only scatteredly throughout the Deep Space Nine. But like it's a lot of this setting up the shadow group to be this overarching villain group that doesn't last very long. I think they're gone by issue 7.
Well, the next issue is called The Shadow Group.
Right. Is it 6? Is it 6 they're gone? I think it's 6. Yeah, because 5 and 6 crossover, right?
Yeah, no, 5 is standalone.
No,
they only last this next issue, I think.
Right.
But yeah, I also gave it a C for the same reasons you said, actually. They've done the plague thing better before with the episode The Quickening, which is a great episode. And they've also done the quarantine on the station thing before in the first season with Babel, when they were all had that gibberish virus. So they've kind of done both of those ideas better. So I also gave it a C. Because it wasn't terrible.
No, I wouldn't say it's the worst thing ever, just not super important.
Yep. All right, well, let's move on to story 3, shall we? See how we can work our way through here with some...
Issue 5.
Some speed. Yeah.
Standalone issue.
Yeah, standalone issue. The Shadow Group. They return to the station just in time to see an explosion go off. And the funny thing is, all these comics, they make it very clear, is all like been happening within like a week, because they keep referencing how everything's still messed up from the last issue.
On the Defiant specifically, they keep saying that they don't have the shields fixed on the Defiant from what happened in issue 1, or they constantly bring it up just to like remind you that this is all happening within a short span of time.
Basically the worst week in DS9 history.
That's right.
So Zial is injured in the attack, in the explosion, and she seems to be the only one that is injured. And the Shadow Group come in and they're chatting and basically just saying what they did. They're the whole
they're monologuing pretty hard.
Yeah, they're like, we went after Zial on purpose to draw out Ducat. So the Shadow Group is so funny. They started an investigation on Deep Space Nine, and in the infirmary, Zial has been stabilized as she is getting a blood transfusion from Garrick, when there is another attempt on her life, or possibly Garrick's, they're not sure, by armed assassins, just like ninjas come out of like everywhere.
Yeah, they do look like ninjas, which I thought was odd. Yeah, very, very
interesting
specific
choice.
Yes.
You did, so they're assassins.
Yeah, well, that's how. I mean, all ninjas are assassants. There's nothing in between.
And all
you need to be an assassin,
probably
you just
be ninjas.
That's right, of course. You got to put bandages on them somewhere.
Yeah. Odo and security subdue them, and they overload their weapons and seemingly commit suicide. And they're like, there was no beam out. They seem to have done that.
Yes.
rather than be captured.
Or killed by
Shadow-
Worf and Odo.
Seriously, throat punching.
That's right.
Um,
I'm not doing this. Just bite your suicide pill and get out of here.
and this is interesting, this part, because there's evidence of 3 different parties possibly being responsible. Like, Worf thinks maybe it's the Klingons because the weapons that were used were Klingon, or the explosives.
Mm.
Garrick thinks it's a former group of Obsidian Order agents.
Of course.
And Dukat, I believe, thinks it's a Bajoran terrorist group.
Mhm.
Yeah, he says that they
he's right.
maybe Maquis. Yeah, he's right.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the most right.
Yeah. So Cisco splits the senior staff into teams to investigate all 3 at the same time. They all kind of split off and go to, one goes to Cardassia, one goes to Bajor, and one stays on the station to investigate. Kira requests to take Garrick and Zial, along with her and Odo, down to Bajor. And when they get down there, they're immediately ambushed, not just stepping out of the shuttle.
Yeah, they wasted no time. Shadow Group is just standing there waiting.
Which repeats a few times in this run, where like as soon as you step off a shuttle, you just.
Well, I guess they don't have a 40-minute runtime. They get 22 pages, so they gotta speed her along. We
gotta forgive that, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose.
Cisco's team's headed to Cardassia to find a battle going on between Maquis and the Cardassian ships. Cisco orders the Maquis ships to surrender and disables them. The Maquis ships go on auto-destruct, but Cisco and the Cardassians beam the Maquis crew out in time, but they turn out to be Cardassians working for the Shadow Group. Mm-hmm. An automated message from Kira's shuttle arrives to the station indicating it's been destroyed. Just then, Dukat contacts them, and they tell him what's going on, so he's super mad that they let Zial go down on this planet after almost being killed. Fair ball. Not that he really cares about anything. It's Dukat. The Shadow Group reveals themselves to Kira and Odo's team, led by a former Bajoran resistor that Kira knew named Zol, who was a resistance cell leader. And he says he's helping the Obsidian Order destroy Cardassia. So he's helping Cardassians destroy other Cardassians. He's not working.
They're kind of a bunch of. They're sort of like a group of from either sides that are like both hate their own worlds. I guess like it's a weird combination. Their motives are a
disgruntled bunch.
There. It's like, well, I'm just gonna blow everything up.
I mean, I guess they want to overthrow the Cardassian government, maybe.
Yeah, it's very Marquis-ish story.
Yeah.
Without being Maquis somehow. They're a Shadow Group this way.
Kira basically laughs at him and she's like, they're gonna betray you like any second now, basically. She's like, you're so dumb. He's like, they totally won't. He's like,
not me.
No,
it's different this time. It's right. They told me
they basically wanted their enemies of the Obsidian Order. That's how you can tell it's the Obsidian Order running the show. They hate Garrick and Dukat, and that's who they wanted here. So they have Garrick and they have Zial because they want Dukat. And so Odo's in this container, but he just replaces the door with his own hand because they're not really paying attention when they put him in there. So he just walks out.
What you want to do when you're trying to capture a shapeshifter is give them the least amount of attention you can. Don't really pay attention to what they're doing or what doors they're making into their own body or anything like that. You really just want to leave them to their own devices without paying any attention to what's coming down the pipeline. Especially when they can change their fucking form at any time.
To glass, apparently.
Yeah, see-through glass. Yeah, amazing.
Seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, we do see one of them turn into fog, so I guess that's not unbelievable.
I guess you can do anything that the story needs you to do.
Yeah. Good
fiction.
Put a great plot device they had with him.
Yeah.
And then the Shadow Group beams in to stop them, at which point they shoot Zial. No, they shoot Zol. Not Zial, of course. They betray Zol, just like we knew was going to happen for sure.
But wasn't he going to, like, he had a gun on Kira, but then Kira appealed to him, and then he faltered?
Yeah. And he was like, maybe you're right. And then boom, they're like, we were waiting for you to falter.
I feel like that's happened before, right? With some, I guess we'll get to when it comes to the rating, but I'm almost positive I've seen that in the show before, where there's some old friend of hers that was a resistance person that got in trouble that turned out to be bad, that she, they had a similar moment. It seems very like this path has been tread before.
Well, that's pretty much the end of that issue.
Yeah.
I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Shadow Group gets wiped out. Oh.
Yep. The Shadow Group gets wiped out.
I mean, the idea of them being this group of like Cardassians working with Bajorans is interesting, because they never really did that. I don't believe in the series either. So it's kind of neat that some of these ideas that didn't work their way into the show, got their way into this. So that's interesting. But I do I'm almost 100% sure, and you would know more than me, but that they've done a similar thing on the Stowe where there were some old, or maybe I'm thinking of the episode where all the
resistors, Bajoran resistors, have had trouble with a bunch of times.
That were her old friends, ended up selling her out later, and then usually there's
Lee
a moment where
Nollis.
exactly, and then they falter, and then they always falter when Kira's there, and then that falter is what gets them killed, pretty much every time. So I feel like the ground hasn't been newly tread on that one either. I'll give it a C. It's fine. I mean, maybe a B. I'd say B. It'd be a better, some of that would be an okay B plot.
I went with a B plot just because I like the idea of them having 3 possibilities and splitting off to solve them, and they all kind of have a piece to play in the solving of it.
That is true, and that was cool too. So I'll stick with a B.
That works. All right, Risk Part 1, Issue 6.
They love their two-parters.
I forgot to show the issue. So there's the Jake Plague one. Oh, poor Jake.
Yes, old Jake.
Which
is funny because it's not like that played that hard into that episode. They just see in that issue. You just see him at the beginning, and then Cisco references maybe once.
He was thinking about it really hard.
He gets a full cover.
And there's them all tied up in the shadow group being
Look how provocative the pose that Kira is left in when she's tied up is. They even got Odo in the little bubble there, which is fun, in this little cage.
Front lit, very nice.
You always when you're drawing a captive female, her butt's always got to be right out front and center.
Oh, of course.
Risk
Part 1. Nice Cisco shot there.
Yes, nice bag. Bag cover. Just going to tell you what's inside. That sounds like the 90s comics too.
And it's
murderer? Question mark?
Cisco's a murderer. We'll find out. The Defiant is exploring the Alpha Quadrant past the Bajoran sector when they encounter massive temporal and spatial distortions, and they run into one before managing to get clear of them, when all of a sudden they are ensnared by 3 tractor beams. Then contacted by a representative of the Shern, who tells them that they are being taken into custody for destroying their experiment. They explain that their preeminent scientist has devised a technology to travel through space and time. I mean, traveling through space is also traveling through time, but we won't get into that. More time, I guess. Time travel. Through conduits, and their arrival destroyed the conduit, killing the test pilot. They're told they will be standing trial for this crime, but Cisco demands that he be held solely responsible, and the Shern agree. Dax is assigned as Cisco's advocate, while Miles looks for weaknesses in the Shern, just in case they have to fight their way out and rescue Cisco, like Kirk style.
Which is a very non-Starfleet answer.
No, but it's very Cisco.
Yeah, it is. It is for sure.
And they're his crew. And they have another scientist there who's kind of teaching Dax how to be an advocate sort of in this trial, and seems to be taking a liking to her, and he seems a bit disgruntled, and he refers to his society as a cathedral to monolithic science, basically.
I'm going to get into some themes with this too.
Okay. It has interesting themes, especially for Star Trek, I feel.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So.
A former head of the project helps Dax he says he's a former head of the project, and gets info for Dax since everyone else is stonewalling her wherever she goes. Can't get anything. When Miles runs in and is saying that the conduit may have been shifted rather than destroyed, and that the test pilot may be alive.
Yeah, you need that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The head of the project rejects this as he seems to have ulterior motives, and Miles has no evidence, but he claims he'll get some. Chief has a plan to take a manned probe into the conduit, because everyone else has been released and they just have Cisco under. Because they keep sending unmanned probes and they just keep getting sucked into gravity wells. And so he's like, but I can steer around them. So, but Kira thinks it's too dangerous. Dax thinks it's too dangerous.
Chief does it
anyway because she doesn't really tell him he can't do it. She's just like, it's dangerous, and kind of walks out. He's just like, well, I wasn't given a direct order. As he even thinks to himself, he's like, I just might even be actually kind of fine.
Yeah.
And then he takes off and Worf orders him back. He's just like, Miles, you have to come back here and to the station now. And he's just like, okay, now I'm disobeying orders.
Yeah. Now it's mutiny.
That was pretty funny. Yeah.
Or not mutiny, but disobeying orders.
But that's the end of that issue.
Yes. One thing I find interesting about this is so the whole scope of this planet is the scientist that's trying to pin everything essentially on Cisco because they're trying to hide this thing that's going on with this project that didn't work out. But the people, there's like this contingent group within the society that feel as though that their society is too focused on expanding science and not focused enough on dealing with the problems at home, like the homeless people or the sick people or people dying of food, like starvation. Like science is all about trying to find stuff about the stars.
And grand science.
Yeah, grand science.
Like,
which is
like not even like the nuts and bolts of science that would help their society get better. They're like, what if we could do time travel? And they put like, all their money into that. So yeah, they show even people picketing and stuff. They're like, basic needs, please, and like that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's
so that's where that cathedral of monolithic science.
Yes, and it's very anti-intellectual, kind of as a theme, basically, which isn't necessarily a bad thing in the context of this story. But it's not necessarily the popular way to look at an idea like this. And it's also kind of
especially for Star Trek.
Yeah, for sure, because it's all about
science
making everything better. But this is like they've gone too far, and they've forgotten about the people. They're more the super intelligent people have lost their connection to the common person, and they're all their minds are solely focused on grand unlocking the secrets of the universe stuff and not actually caring about their own people, which very un-Star Trek, but kind of fit well into the storyline.
Which is interesting that it can take that kind of take even for a Star Trek story. But for current affairs, it made me think of how people are like, why are these uber billionaires spending all this money to go to space when there's starving people on Earth and that sort of thing? It reminded me of that argument.
100%. It's the same actually, the connection was not lost to me either. The Bezos blue, whatever, penis rocket, all this stuff. Like it very much felt on the nose for something I might see in like, I don't know, Star Trek Discovery episode or something, or something new.
DS9 was ahead of its time, even in comic form, apparently.
It sure was. I mean, the Bell riots happened, a couple years ago now? If the timelines catch up, yeah.
Yeah.
Not too long ago.
The eugenics wars are coming up soon.
All right. I'm on Team Con.
No, wait, that was the 90s. Where were you in the eugenics wars? Yeah, I think it was.
Team Con.
Yeah. So we get this one. Chief, unmanned probing it to save Cisco's life. No, manned probing it.
I'm a sophomore. Chief just probing around.
So he goes through, and it's been like 4 hours, and they haven't seen him. Kira says she's going to kill Miles if he returns. And then Worf walks in and says he may have to kill Miles if he returns.
Yes.
Everyone's just going to kill him if he comes
back. Up to kill Miles once he gets back.
Yeah, that's what Jack says. She's like, wait in line. Everyone's trying to kill him. But he returns, and he has evidence that he needs, but he didn't find the pilot. The project head, his name's Koth, the current project head, who's a big jerk.
Yes.
He denies their evidence, but Dr. Myette, the guy helping Dax, is furious and tells Kira he will find out what Koth has been plotting and help them out. And they find out that the project Koth he buried a report that showed that this conduit project was super sketchy to begin with and was likely going to end up in catastrophe for that pilot anyway, because anything would set it off essentially. So like just the Defiant scanning it is what set it off. Like literally anything. You could breathe on this thing and it was going to kill that pilot.
Yeah.
So he buried that report, and that's why he's super sketchy. Because he like wants all this glory if it does work, because that's the only thing their society really admires.
Yeah, it's like scientific glory kind of thing,
Yeah, it's science is God on the world. He thinks he'd be a god if he gets this, and and he has to compete with project funding, because he even says the other big ideas that these people were thinking about spending money on before they went with this conduit thing, I found pretty interesting. They had an idea like sending colony ships to every quadrant, creating functioning stars out of gas giants, and using cosmic debris to create entirely new planets. Oh, and interstellar transporters, which if you can do interstellar transportation, I guess maybe they just really wanted to do time travel. I don't know why they needed the conduits if they could but big ideas. Like it's
Yeah.
an interesting society that just shoots that high,
Yeah,
aims that
yeah.
high.
Well, people are starving to death in the streets.
Well, they're starving to death. Yeah, never mind. It's a bit of a compartmentalized society.
It's almost like the Tommy Wiseau of Alien Species. It's like instead of trying to figure out plot or a good storytelling, we're just gonna make a movie. Let's just do it, and then we'll see what happens. That's
hi, Worf.
Yeah. Oh, hi, Worf. Yeah,
hi,
exactly.
Worf.
Yeah. I like this.
Oh, Tommy Wiseau. So yeah, science is the pursuit of truth, is Myev's reasoning for going after Koth. He's just like, this isn't science if he's burying reports and these types of things.
Yes.
And Kira suggests that they focus on saving. Maev, they get in a fist fight, and Koth punches Maev, and then Kira suggests they stop punching each other because they can go save this pilot. They can go through this conduit and save this pilot. And Chief says, like, maybe the Defiant can make it through because they're like, we don't even have any more ships. Like, we had that one test ship, and that was
you guys sent it off through
so Chief makes that work. Chief says maybe the Defiant can make it along with the other. With a bunch of other maybes, he keeps saying. And Kira's just like, would you stop saying maybe? So then, like, Dax rewords everything Miles said without all the maybes. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, I did enjoy that. That seemed character unknown for the characters.
Some of these feel like they maybe just were like episode plots they didn't use.
Yeah, I get that vibe too. Like, it really did feel like I would have watched this in an episode. To the point that in my headspace, I may even forget that some of these were down the line were comic stories and not actual episodes.
Yeah. And Chief just smirks. He's just like, "See, not a maybe in the bunch, Major." There was a terrible Chief impression. I made him Southern.
Yeah, he says Southern Chief.
Yeah, Southern Chief. God, I'm deleting that. No, maybe I'll leave it. No, Maev and the Chief are in engineering, and they're keeping the Defiant together, going through this conduit. And Maev knocks the Chief out. Dax goes to engineering to see what's up with the Chief, and finds Maev sabotaging the ship. He says the Shern need a catastrophic failure to end this science warship. Yeah, that's his whole
good
thing.
guy is a bad guy.
The good guy's a bad guy.
The guy that, like, and they make it very apparent that Dax might have feelings for him. It shows him hanging out and being like, there's some moments.
They even have a bit of a "what if we could" kind of a.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So which is funny because, like, I'm sure that's been done a million times to death on a million shows, but Star Trek especially. But it's always like, I could have loved you maybe, but this is more important, that sort of thing. So
so Jeji is fighting him and she's like winning. She flips him against the wall and Worf shows up and just like stuns him.
Which I thought was odd. Like Worf's the voice of reason that uses a stun, like a phaser to stun a guy instead of just beating the crud out of him with a bat lift or whatever. Like
Worf's just like gabbing away and she's just like, stop gabbing. He's just like, Klingons do not gab. And she's like, core gabs.
Oh, yeah. And then he's like,
just like,
gabs.
This is true. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Perhaps he gabs or something like that. Is what he said.
Yeah. Perhaps he does.
Yeah.
They find the scientist and return to the Shern base. And, Dax quotes herself. She quotes Curzon.
Right.
And she says, life needs balance between the monumental and the mundane. And that's what this society is missing. Which I thought was an interesting kind of summary of the idea of this episode.
Yeah, I can see that too. Like I said, it's a big theme. It's a big hit. Yeah. It's a big swing with this theme, especially in a Star Trek world. Because Star Trek is all around, kind of one of the very few non-dystopian visions of what humanity can achieve in the future. So the fact that they kind of that's why most people do. So it's rare there's an optimistic view of the future when it comes to what humans are going to achieve. And as I think I'm a fairly positive guy, but as far as humanity goes, I have a fairly nihilistic view.
You're thinking Cylons.
We'll just blow ourselves up before we get to that level. I feel like Cylons are hopeful because we had to create something that's going to survive. That actually is
just
strong
a better
and powerful
version and replace it.
it's like it's actually kind of positive. We are capable of creating something that might replace us, but I feel like we're just going to kill ourselves with nukes or disease or something. I mean, I don't want to believe that, but there's it's in there. So
the disease thing seems a little more realistic, given some people's reactions we've seen. I think, but
disease related to wet markets and all these things that we as humans do, that create these things. But yeah, no, I thought it was interesting. I did like that theme, and for that alone, I would give this an A.
I gave it an A as well, and it ends with a Dak saying, "Why live 7 lifetimes if you can't quote yourself once in a while?" Which is pretty
which is a great line actually, and what we totally could see being said on the show as well. So,
I also gave it an A. Would have been actually quite a good episode. I think.
I agree. Yeah, 100%.
All right, issue
8.
Ooh, 8
with the Romulans.
Oh yes, the away team in peril.
Right,
peril.
Jake's on there for some reason. We gotta include Jake.
Oh, this is the one where they go to the jungle planet.
Yeah, with all the
Public Enemies, Private Lives.
Good title.
And an away team of Chief. Again, feels like the show titles. It's Chief and Keiko, Kira, and Jake head to an uninhabited jungle planet of Morer 4. Once there, they interrupt a business deal between Maquis and some tech dealers. The away team is captured, but Kira has the runabout send out a distress beacon, which DS9 receives, and then a Defiant books it through the Badlands to get there as fast as they can. When decloaking Tomalak, he was a great regular appearance character on TNG.
Yes, I did recognize him.
Yeah, Commander Tomalak. He's his banter with Picard is legendary. So I was pretty happy to see him. So he decloaks and destroys the runabout. The dealers are surgically altered Romulans, it turns out, and they kill the Maquis to replace them. They aim to pit the Maquis against the Federation in a hot war, basically. And the leader of them is Tomalak's son, which is why Tomalak is here. The Defiant arrives, as does a Maquis ship captained by Cal Hudson.
Yes,
I was really happy to see that too. Yeah. Who says the Maquis have nothing to do with this, and Ben believes them; they're buddies.
Which is interesting because they didn't end on the best terms in the show.
No, I guess this is before that ending.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing the actor died or something because they just said that this guy died off hand, didn't he? Because after that first interaction, did we not see him again? Carl or Cal?
Cal, I believe we see him twice.
Right. Yeah. Right. We run into him,
and they do just brush it away. I don't think the actor died. I could be wrong with that, but they do just be like Eddington told him he died. He's just like,
that's what I mean. His death was just sort of like Eddington's like, oh yeah, he died, and then you're like, what? Like it seemed because they did run into each other twice, I believe. The first time when he found out he was the Maquis, and then later on again. But, I remember his death seeming fairly anticlimactic considering how important. I guess he just got replaced with Eddington essentially, but.
Good actor too, and I liked the relationship with him and Ben. I definitely could have seen more of him, which was nice to see him in this. Same with Tomalak. The Splinter Group is headed by Kunkel, who was one of the guys actually who was messing with that virus back in the Cancer Within. So this is like
nice throwback.
This Maquis the worst. He's kind of a jerk. And Ben asks for Cal's help, and Cal's like, of course, because I'd never let anything happen to Jake. And that's the end of that issue.
Yeah, I thought the overbearing father archetype is one that's been played out a lot in, film and television. I don't remember it playing too deeply in Deep Space Nine, aside from Cisco and Jake stuff. But the idea that like the bad guy's dad is kind of a dick, and the reason that he's a dick is that his dad has been so hard on him his whole life. So and even makes some kind of shift into being almost a good guy later, or questioning all this stuff because it's just what his dad did. But it was interesting because even Tomalak isn't necessarily like the super bad guy in it either. It's just sort of the misguided son that sort of that brought about all this.
It's a parent figure that shows up.
Yeah,
it's a pretty funny way to use that character.
Yeah, which I thought was interesting as well. I was like, that's a different take on it, and it is kind of neat that they found ways. Although I find it odd when talking about all of this at once, like we're doing right now, how much
Mm.
Next Generation bleeds into this, because it
A
didn't
lot.
bleed into Deep Space Nine a lot, aside from, I mean, obviously Miles
First
and Worf,
episode and
yeah, in the
Worf, of
first
course.
episode, but that's really it.
Tom
I mean,
Riker. Tom Riker showed up
right,
that
in one
once.
episode with him, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, not a
which they
lot.
reference in the book too at some point. I
Yeah,
believe.
we get we do actually. That's funny.
Yes.
Little Tom Riker nod. Yep,
Yep.
we got issue 9.
Yes.
Oh,
There you go.
explosion on the
Captain
Defiant there.
Defiant.
Public Enemies, Private Lives number 2. Defiant tries to observe the situation under cloak, but Tomluk easily detects them, they're Romulans, and tells them he is on a rescue mission and he's headed to the planet. And he will let Sisko know if he sees his away team. The away team attempts escape, but is caught and taunted by the Romulan leader Narek, which is Tomluk's son, which pisses off Miles and Kira, and a fight ensues. They just he didn't like the way he talked to him, so they just start swinging. It was so funny.
Yeah. It seemed like some manufactured drama that was necessarily earned there.
Yeah. Jake makes a run for it during all the kerfuffle, and he's about to be shot when Tomluk appears and tells his son to use better methods when doing covert ops than just like shooting people. It's like, it's not very covert.
Yeah, he's pretty hard, this kid.
He is. Tomluk says it's a stalemate in space, so they have to accomplish the mission down on the planet. The Romulan left in charge hates Klingons, so he decloaks and fires on the Defiant.
Right.
While Tomluk's away. After detecting Worf, he's like, there's a Klingon life sign. I'm just going to start a
The whole shit.
Yeah.
Start a space war.
That's some serious hate.
Mm-hmm.
A chase through the dark jungle night ensues, and Jake almost falls in a tar pit. Narek catches up and almost shoots Jake, but he does fall in the tar pit. Jake saves him. Narek ponders if the gesture is why Jake is respected by his father, but Narek isn't, because Narek wouldn't do that.
Mm-hmm. Which is very Star Trek. Yeah. I wrote down a note that whole kind of inner monologue dialogue he has with himself is very Star Trek. It felt very on brand for Star Trek.
Yeah. It did.
It felt like I would have seen that in an episode for sure. 100%.
This is one of the ones that really feels like an episode, especially with Cal Hudson showing up.
Yeah, exactly.
Tomluk may be forced in there, but who cares? He's a great character.
It works. It works. It works for what they need him to, yeah.
In the firefight above, Worf disables the Romulan warbird, David versus Goliath style. Like, it's so small compared to like the giant warbird. It's a cool shot they show. The Romulans then beam out the crew of their cargo ship and destroy it. The cargo ship that people use down below. Cal and Sisko say goodbye to each other. Cal didn't really need to be there. He almost
not
does
really,
nothing.
And even like the fact that they're like, all right, so long. It's like you're still an enemy of this Starfleet. You know what I mean? Like, I know you're friends that are now enemies, but you'd still think that Sisko may be like, you got to turn yourself in or something. They're just like, goodbye.
Come with us. No. All right. Well, I tried.
All right, we tried. Yeah. Even that would have been better.
Maquis.
You like so and so over there.
Yeah.
Tell
your wife I said hi. No, I think
I'll see you at dinner on Sunday as they go away.
Yeah, exactly. Sisko, Worf, and Odo and Bashir beam down. Worf says it smells like Romulans. They find the away team minus Jake, and Sisko goes after him. He finds Jake and Narek, and Jake tells Ben to let Narek go as he has a worse punishment than prison ahead of him, which is basically just dealing with Tomluk.
Mm-hmm.
Tomluk beams up Narek.
Reference that, I like that too.
Yeah. Sisko tells Tomluk instead of starting a war between Starfleet and the Maquis, his traitors forced them to cooperate. So it did completely the opposite, which I thought was funny. And Jake is the hero due to his infuriatingly likable personality.
Yeah, I like that
Ben
too.
Says. Yeah. He is a very likable character.
He is a very likable character. I've always liked Jake. This one did feel very much like an episode, like a full. It felt fleshed out and it felt a lot like a real. Like I give it an A for that reason. It like the throwbacks to Tomahawk and to Cal, all fun. The Maquis playing in with a bit between the Romulans, because the Romulans never really focused too deeply into Deep Space Nine. A little bit here and there. But, not in any real way. I don't remember any episode they were specifically the bad guys. Just the only one that comes to mind offhand is the one where they're trying to convince them to enter the war on the side of the Federation. But that's, right. So, I give it an A. I think it was fun.
Points well made. I actually gave it a B because I felt like it didn't have quite enough. Like, I could have just took the Tomahawk interactions with Ben and Cal
Yeah.
could show up and say hi, and I could have just had that for the episode. Pretty much. So it did have some nice Jake stuff. So I will give you that. I can see why it would have been a good episode.
The father-son thing, I think, like, if it was a full episode, they probably would have fleshed that out more.
Yeah.
Maybe comparisons between Ben and Jake. They probably would have manufactured some kind of conflict with them to show that their relationship's not perfect either, but they handle it in a different way, which is why they work in Tom Malak and Narok. Is that his son's name?
Narok, yeah.
Yeah, Narok. So
that would have been good.
Yeah.
All right, so we're getting through it here. The last two are going to be like that. My summaries are like 2 sentences.
Sure.
So
oh no, we're going deep
here.
Deep. This is going to be a 6-hour episode. Nobody's going.
We're looking at about 2.
Yeah, that's all right. I'll take it.
All right. I may have said this would be a quicker segment than that.
It's all right. I'm having fun.
But all right, good. Me too. Issue 10. This is a legendary cover.
Yes, and felt very. I'm giving this an A right off the get go because it was
the whole 2-parter.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's the wedding 2-parter basically.
Yeah, but it felt very. I mean, you describe it, and I'll jump in as we go.
Okay.
But it felt very much like an episode of the show, a fun episode.
I'll spoil it as well. I gave it an A.
Okay, cool.
This is a good story.
Yeah.
Luoxana shows up to the station with her baby and a new Bolian fiance. So I have to stop now. I don't know how much you know about Bolians.
Just sporadically when they show up on the show.
Okay,
they never really seem to do a lot with them.
They have caustic body fluids to the point where like their quarters are even always separated from like other species quarters usually.
Like they smell bad, or they actually
they're like have acidic spit and acidic like body fluids and these types of things. So having a Bolian fiance just raises some questions.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Maybe Betazoids can handle it.
Well, she can do a lot of things, which this story comes to show. And she's asking Odo for a divorce so she can marry this Bolian Var.
Which I thought was really interesting because they never addressed that on the show.
The divorce.
Yeah.
No, they
didn't. Just assume it happened somewhere. But like, just the idea that it's still lingering, that he's still technically married to her, I thought was a nice little touch. And also the fact that she was back after her appearance in the show. Like it did feel very much like it would be a third part of that sort of story with those two.
Yeah. This one would be a great episode. Like this
for sure,
episode. So Odo is a bit conflicted. He does have feelings for Luoxana, and he laments that a bit. He's a brooding kind of fella.
She's not Kira, but he does have feelings.
Yeah. Quark and Rom are in the shuttle bay admiring Var's ship, as Quark is excited about making a ton of latinum off catering this wedding.
Mm-hmm. As Quark does. The one thing I wish this series would have had was a good Quark episode. This is close as we got to it, but
it's true. That it is what it's lacking. That is unfortunate.
Right.
So she's the inheritor of the sacred chalice of Reeks and the holy rings of Betazed. This is going to be a lot of catering.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's funny, she didn't invite Deanna, and she actually comments on that. She's like, she can't come to all my weddings.
Yeah. Or I don't know. Did she say she specifically didn't invite her, just that she couldn't make it because she was off somewhere else or something?
She didn't really specify, but she just, when asked about it, she kind of brushed it off, saying she can't be expected to come to all my weddings.
Yeah, which I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. So Rom touches this weird goo on the ship, which he says he saw him move, but Quark dismisses him and they leave. Luoxana, this scene weirds me out. Luoxana comes in and she rubs Sisko's head.
Yeah.
That was weird. She's
man,
just like, I like the new look.
Yeah, right. He acknowledges the change. It's weird how they make like the timelines of this is a weird mismatch of trying to figure out where this all fits, because like when they were married,
some things seem like season 5-ish.
Yeah, but then some seem more like that, and then
yeah.
like because it's also references to Worf and Jadzia being together. It doesn't really play out in the series. You don't see that happen in the comic. It's just at the start of some new storyline. They're just together now. So like it's just sort of welding in amongst the continuity of the entire series.
That's a good point. It's really just those first couple stories that sort of are like a week, and then there's definitely time between these stories
for sure.
they fix the Defiant and it stays fixed for a while.
Yeah. They don't reference that it was damaged a week ago.
No. Dax and Worf are off the station on Ryza again, which is hilarious.
So that means they're together now, but they weren't really last time because she was making googly eyes at that that guy in the science.
Yeah, and it's a reference to the last time they were on Ryza, which went horribly because Worf got all conservative and weird.
Which I thought was interesting. It was like, how many sexual partners did you have? Like, what do you care?
Well.
It's like
we're on Ryza. You can have as many as you want. Seek Maharon.
That's right.
Yeah.
Freak on there, Worf.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And like Luwak's on it says Sisko's new look is like severe, dashing, and somewhat Klingon.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So the chief wonders how she convinced Worf to go to Ryza again, of course. And she's Luoxana says, old age and treachery will always overcome the youth and Klingon honor, chief. Which I thought was pretty funny. They want Sisko to marry them, do the ceremony. Garrick is getting lots of work as well because he has to do all the clothes for this wedding. And most of them aren't going naked despite it being a Betazoid ceremony.
Which they reference overtly so they don't have naked people walking around in the comic.
Yeah.
And on the show.
It's like, yeah, we're just not doing it naked this time. So,
yeah. Okay. All right.
It's so funny. Vara's assistant doesn't like Luoxana and thinks she is cold and imperious. She leaves.
It's pretty obvious early on the assistant is into Duder. Like it's very lady doth protest too much kind of thing. Like it's pretty obvious that she doesn't like her because they even make a reference to jealousy, right? Or something. They say like Shakespeare mentioned the green eye, the green-eyed monster, or whatever. Yeah. Yeah,
there was a couple of Shakespeare references in this one.
Yeah. And Christopher Plummer is going to show up with all the Shakespeare in this.
Cry havoc.
It's
my favorite Star Trek movie, by the way.
It's a side note, but I just love that Christopher Plummer's like, yeah, I'll do it, but I want him to quote Shakespeare, and like, well, it doesn't really make any sense, but yeah, sure, whatever. Like the Klingon.
And I don't want one of those foreheads. He's like, all right, we'll give you an eye patch. Like, okay.
All right.
So Vara's assistant leaves in a huff, and she's attacked by the slime. Rom goes to meet a coworker, but only finds her beloved hypo spanner that her deceased father gave her, covered in the slime.
Which is a nice little bit to throw in just to make it seem like to give you this person that you've never heard of before, some frame of reference as to why they wouldn't leave their spanner behind.
Yeah. She would never leave
my
her
beloved spanner. It's like, I love that idea.
Beloved spanner.
I love that idea. Funny. That's like her father gave it to her. That's like me saying like, oh man, this is my favorite iPhone. My dad gave it to me 20 years ago and I'm still using it today. Like you think technology would catch up to a point that it's not as cool to be using that anymore or not even functional.
Oh yeah. Point.
I think the spanner would probably be like 30 years old and long, outdated as far as technology goes.
Maybe a better equivalent is like that's the dear beloved wrench your father gave you.
I suppose, but I mean, I assume everything in Star Trek is like a little computer, so I assume it has to be upgraded or, have new technology added eventually.
Sisko wants to get to the bottom of the slime, as it seems to be as if it's some sort of sloughed off tissue. So they think it's some sort of biological organism, maybe sentient life.
It's alive,
yeah. But they want the wedding to go ahead to avoid panic. You got to love that. Like, this is like one of these horror plots where they're like, we just got to not tell anybody what's going on.
It's Jaws. It's Jaws.
Yeah,
it's Jaws. You don't close down the beach. You don't want to scare
Oh my God.
tourists.
Sisko's the mayor of...
He's the mayor in Jaws.
Sandy Beach or whatever it is. Oh, no.
You know what's the most interesting thing I can say about Jaws? Is after Jaws 1, in Jaws 2, that guy is still the mayor. So after all of that, he continued to be the mayor of Amity Island.
Yeah, Amity Island.
So if you don't believe that, Donald Trump can get elected twice.
Oh my God.
There you go. The mayor got elected in again.
So they send Rom home to go to Lita. They don't think they need his help in this particular thing, but he disagrees. And he goes to the shuttle bay instead. And he and the security officer, I believe her name's Atana. She actually is in the show.
She shows up in it quite a bit, the Bajoran security officer, which I was like, I don't remember her in the show.
Yeah, she's there. She's like the only one like Odo ever really talks to.
Yeah, I guess so. I always thought of her maybe as like Eddington before Eddington became important, where he's just sort of there. Never really
Yeah.
did much, but was never really a main character until he betrayed them.
With editing, it was conspicuous because it's like, where did this guy come from, and why is he getting so many lines?
Yeah, it's like I've been here all along. Okay,
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, actually, no, they reference when they brought him on. It's security.
Yeah,
Starfleet sent in a person.
they didn't trust Odo. Yeah,
that's right.
So he and the security officer find the slime has disappeared off that ship. So it must have moved because it hasn't been cleaned, they figure. And they assume it must have moved down to the habitat ring. And so Rom tries to contact Lita at their quarters, but it's too late. The slime has gotten Lita in the sonic shower.
Yes, which is
quite alluring.
The sexiest depiction of sonic showers I've ever seen. Like
Yeah.
they
it even has steam. It looks like it has steam.
It does, because they need something to block out all her parts so that they can
that's true.
with a comic book. But yeah, they've all these like super like provocative shots with like just carefully placed steam covering her nipples and all these other things to make it like fit within the comic, which I found like fairly like super titillating for a Star Trek thing.
Yeah,
like I get it for normal comics. I mean, they do it all the time when anything Catwoman or Black Widow or anybody shows up, they're always coming out of the shower or something. It's like, but in a Star Trek comic, it seems a little like it just seems a little off. Because I mean, Lita's always sort of been the sex pot of that show, but like to have her like totally filling that role in comic world was interesting to see.
So like 80s horror, or like 70s horror too.
Yeah. Oh, like Italian horror where everybody's like coming out of the
slime.
shower before they get murdered.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
everybody. Oh, there's just like Italian horror is the best because there's just like anything with Argento, there's just like random people coming in, like, and usually they're lesbians, and it doesn't pursue the plot at all. It's just a reason to have two naked women wandering around their apartment so someone can come in and murder them. Like just ridiculous.
Man.
Yeah, it's the 70s.
So that's the end of that. That's a big cliffhanger at the end of that.
Yes, right. And I liked I mean, we can roll into this since it's all one story, but I liked how in 11 we finally get badass Nog. Like Nog suits up and gets a bunch of weapons and armor basically and goes after this thing.
I think that might be in the next issue, but he's good.
It is.
He goes and gets work because Quark, you must have some guns you haven't sold.
Hanging around, which he does, of course. But
the next one.
Yes, the divorcing Odo idea I thought was fun. That whole thing played into it well. Another wedding, and even seemed a little bit like Aliens-ish with this thing picking people off the station
or body snatchers, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're not being replaced, but the idea that like there's something taking people, and even which we get into the next episode,
the blob
pods. Yeah, very blobby. But in the blob, you're definitely dead when it gets you. This one, kind of leaves it open as to what happens.
Yeah. So 4 funerals and a wedding, part 2.
Nice.
Oh, that's what this one's called. So sometimes
Where did the funerals happen? I don't remember any of that. Did 4 people die?
No, because Rom finds them.
Right.
So maybe not the best title.
We'll let it go. The others have been great.
Yes.
They're allowed an off day.
Yeah. It's still pretty good title. Rom is freaking out as Lita is missing, and he wants to borrow weapons from Quark. Oh, and this is like the first time, and it's done again in this comic too, where the Ferengi used charity as like an expletive.
Right.
It's like charity, and he's just like, to charity with my latinum. Rom says to Quark.
Yeah, I like that too.
Quark's like, don't swear.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing that anywhere in the show, but I liked it.
No, I don't think they ever did, but they use it twice in this. That was funny. To charity. Odo investigates and rules out a changeling, which seemed obvious anyway. Then I have just written down Commando Rom.
Yeah. Get all kitted out with armor and the guns, and I like how he
looks cool.
I like because like he had a few moments like that in the show, but I liked how this really sort of given him the full. Like he
didn't have a commando moment. He had hero moments.
And even when he overtly says, like, I never stood up to my brother, and this is like Lita's my world, like I need to do this for her. And that was a nice moment. It was nice seeing Nog stepped up a bit in the past, and it's always been cool what he does in the show.
Julian finds that the creature is targeting females to steal their hormones so that it can reproduce, which is I found an interesting science concept.
I liked it too.
Nice one.
Yeah.
The Rom and the security officer search the waste extraction, so they're going through the Shawshank Redemption style.
Yeah, that's right. Wolf crawled through a river of shit.
Yeah. Actually, you know what?
Pretty
That's one of my
mad.
favorite movies too. When we
Yeah,
talk
it's-
about movies.
actually, when you talk about it, that's the answer I get for favorite movies for most people. I think
It's a good movie.
statistically, that's probably the most I've ever got is for Shawshank. It's a good choice. Great choice.
It is. Yeah, I like that. So, and then they find them. They have them
Like
kind of hanging
suspended
from
in
the
pods,
ceiling.
very
alien
aliens,
style.
kind of. Yeah.
So they do a lot of nods, like visually in this one.
They do it to aliens for sure. Aliens
Yeah.
specifically, but yeah.
So he shoots at the slime, and it seems to loosen its grip on the women. And then back at the wedding, Odo and Var are like getting into it because Var's all like, "I think you're a jerk, and I'm jealous," and that sort of thing.
Which came out of nowhere. He seemed very
Yeah, it
nice
did.
for the whole time until this sudden moment where he's just like, "I'm a jerk now," and it's like, what?
Well, I have a theory about that actually in a second here.
Okay.
And then the wedding starts. Lita throws. No, so they are free. The women do get free back down in the waste extraction. And Lita takes Rom's grenade and like throws it at the slime. And Rom's just like, no, like that's probably not the best way to do it.
Yeah, let's split it into multiple slimes. That's smart.
But it like blows a hole in
the side of the station.
Yeah, exactly. So like the slime and everyone spill into the wedding scene essentially. So then Luoxana, due to her telepathy, she knows everything everyone else knows about this creature, but she also kind of senses some things from this creature, and she's just like, well, if it just needs female hormones, I got this. And she just walks up to it and lets it envelop her. And I got more female hormones than all of these ladies combined. Don't even worry about it. And she does. She overloads it and kills it. It dies. I didn't think it was gonna die.
Julian even says something like, "Well, if it died, I imagine it died with a smile on his face." Like,
that's true.
Which seems to make it okay that it died. You know what I mean? Like, it's a sentient form of life, or some kind anyway.
It's just what a crazy thing, but it was a good Luoxana moment. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I agree.
Stuff like that in Brave,
I agree, and it was kind of neat that she's just so womanly that she,
which we do
literally
see.
Yes, which we do see quite a bit in the show. That she just
it's a healthy libido.
That's right.
And then she finds Var hiding like a coward, and she breaks off the wedding because she calls him a coward and that sort of thing. But then she tells Odo the real reason she dumped Var, which was who found it out? Somebody found out, like someone on the crew, Chief O'Brien, maybe, or no, it was Odo. No, it wasn't Odo.
No, it wasn't.
So
Odo.
anyway,
somebody figured, maybe it's Julian. I don't know. Someone figured out there was something.
Yeah, it was
their
Julian.
Their neural path that was hiding the fact
they
they
had
were
a
lying.
Thing. Yeah, they were lying and planning to steal her money, basically.
Yeah, which seemed a little like you didn't need. They could have just capped it with he's a coward, and that would have been fine. Like to throw in an extra reason as to why she didn't need to be with him was like kind of seemed like overkill.
Yeah, so my whole theory with Var was like maybe he knew they were onto him and he was just freaking out or something.
Yeah, I could see
That's the only thing I could think of.
But I don't know. It just seemed like he didn't need to bother. It seemed like enough was going on without needing to throw in yet another guy trying to steal her money.
That was the Luoxana wedding
episode. A plus.
A grade. Oh, an A plus. That's an acceptable grade.
Ooh, excellent.
I gave
tread new ground.
I gave it an A, but I will say I do have an A plus coming up.
Ooh, excellent.
Yeah, I had an A plus.
Is it the Tribbles one?
No.
Okay.
That's good though. Issue 12, Command Decisions.
So this must have been a crossover with another comic, was it? These two?
Yeah, and I am not familiar with that. It's like a Starfleet Academy
comic, which they reference significantly in it. And this is one of my problems.
Which is like this temporal
telepathy
war
wars.
Confusing. Yeah, telepathy war.
I was like, why is it called telepathy wars? Because none of that plays into this. But I'm guessing it is.
And why is it starting at part 2?
Yeah. Well, that's it. Like that's part of the one of the drawbacks for comics to me. And modern day comics does it a lot, where like they'll just pause the regular comic you're reading and be like, all right, this takes place within this big event. Marvel does it constantly. With this big event we're doing, like Fear Itself, or Maximum Carnage or Minimum Carnage or whatever, War of the Symbiotes, all that sort of stuff. So like I'll be watching I'll be reading Amazing Spider-Man, all of a sudden the story will just break and the next issue will be all the stuff that has to do with this Absolute Carnage storyline that I'm not reading it. I have no interest in it. For now I got 3 issues of something I don't care about. And this felt very much like that. Like it's just some other storyline in the Starfleet Academy comic that they just sort of, shoehorned into this to do the overlap.
And it didn't play into it much. So to me, it didn't really detract from it a whole lot.
And the
So
story
it
wasn't that
they're
interesting.
necessary. The part around them, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead and give us a synopsis.
No problem. So this is command decisions.
Mhm.
The Dominion and the Jem'Hadar are going to attack the station within hours. This one really feels like one of the Dominion War episodes, like at the height of.
Yep.
And they're going to attack it within hours, and only a few Klingon ships and a few civilian ships and the Defiant are there to defend the station. And then a hail comes in from Picard.
Yes.
Jean-Luc Picard.
Oh,
Johnny Luke shows up
J. Luke.
on the Enterprise E, fancy new ship, Sovereign class. And he will beat the Cardassians there by a half an hour, he says. And then then it crosses over with the Starfleet Academy series, and you
Nog references
on board
this,
the
like,
Enterprise.
this
On board the
group
Enterprise, there's this Admiral Decker.
Yes.
And Omega Squad,
Yes.
which, Red Squad and Alpha Squad, whatever you want to call them, they're always trouble in Star Trek. Elite cadets are the worst.
Yeah. Bunch of pompous bastards.
But and Decker is Decker from the famed Doomsday Machine TOS episode Deckers. So
right, who references his grandfather or whatever.
Commodore Decker.
Yeah.
The kid is the grandson or great grandson, I think. Actually, but yeah. So the Omega Squad went to Talos 4, which has come up often on Locutors of Trek. If you go to Talos 4, where the Talosians are, the Federation will kill you. It's the only thing they will kill you for. It's the only thing they have a death sentence for, which is going to Talos 4. And the cadets did that, even though while there, they did find out a Jem'Hadar plot. And so they were doing something they thought was right, but now they're going to get executed.
It still seems insane to me that Starfleet would do that for any reason.
It does. But it was the only way they could stop the Talosians from going crazy on them in that episode. It was like, we'll just never come back, and we promise no one else will. So it's an interesting little kind of carry on.
Yeah, but obviously the Talosians are okay with it because these guys got off and they didn't start an intergalactic thing with them.
Yeah, I wonder how that goes in that Starfleet Academy comic. We don't get that in this, but one of them is actually that admiral's kid, and he still doesn't care that they're going to execute them.
Yeah.
Yeesh. Odo says they aren't on the station, but he doesn't want to hand the cadets over even if they are, because he did that once before in the episode Things Past, and he'd regretted it. So that was a nice little nod.
That was, yes.
Decker believes they have a friend who will hide them on the station, which they do. Which you mentioned,
Nog.
Yeah,
old Noggy boy.
And he has a plan to smuggle them aboard. He absolutely does. The Admiral had him figured out.
It's actually pretty clever, I guess. He uses the Defiant transporter to bring them in instead of the Deep Space Nine one.
Yeah, it was smart, but then he forgot to erase the records.
Yes, which is classic now.
Yeah, he was too happy with himself in the first place.
That's right.
Jake wants to help Nog, but Nog refuses. Doesn't want to get him involved in illegal stuff. Enterprise and Martok's fleet arrive. Worf, Martok, and Kira want a preemptive strike, but Sisko says that a defensive war is they say a defensive war is a fool's errand, but Sisko doesn't want to do the preemptive strike. Martok responds that 1,000 throats may be cut in a single night by a running man.
Which is nice. I've heard that before.
Yeah, well,
maybe it was in the. Yeah,
it might have been another Shakespeare thing or something.
Or I just remember what I read when I read the comic and thinking that was interesting too. But
yeah,
it was a good one.
And Sisko still says no, and Martok says he's just going to go anyway, and he'll do the preemptive strike himself. Worf confronts the captain because he agrees with Martok, and Sisko just snaps at him and tells him to go meet his old shipmates. He's like, "Your friends are here. Like, go play." Basically, he's pretty mad.
Piss off.
Yeah. Kira and Worf basically agree as they're walking away, and they're away from Sisko, that Kira is going to sneak off and steal the Defiant. And Worf's just going to be like, well, Captain told me I'm going to be busy playing with my friends, so I guess I wouldn't see you do it.
Yeah. Which is very, it's very much that, like, you can do it, but, I'm not going to tell you can do it. I'm just going to leave this unlocked thing over here and walk away, Whatever happens, it's out of my hands.
Yeah. Nog beams Omega Squad into Quark's liquor storeroom.
Right.
And they're like, they're going to come down here for warp plasma soon. It smells so terrible in here, which I thought was pretty funny. Chief and Worf greet the Enterprise crew and Decker. Chief wonders if Riker is actually Tom Riker again, because Tom Riker stunned Chief on that DS9 episode.
And they reference that a couple times,
Yeah, and Riker's just like, I'm not my clone's keeper.
Yeah, it's a nice line.
Yeah. Worf tells Deanna that he's dating an older woman. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah.
Which was nice.
The bridge crew finds the Omega runabout, and then it explodes like as soon as they find it. The Admiral presumes them dead and just returns to the Enterprise. He's just like, well, I guess that's that.
Just wipe your hands. It's there we go. It's all wrapped
That's
up
the
in a neat
execution,
little
I guess.
package.
That was a funny moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then Nog. Deanna telepathically in that scene, actually, Deanna telepathically talks to Will about how strange the Admiral's being, and how she knows that the cadets are still alive because one of them is also like a betazoid with high telepathy. Nog didn't erase the transporter logs, though, as we said, so he sneaks back aboard the Defiant to try to erase them. And just then, Kira and Garrick and Odo, who she's bringing with her on her little piracy venture, beam onto the bridge where Nog is. And
Garrick is an odd choice.
Yeah.
He's not really usually included in these sort of things if it's,
Not by Kira.
No, not usually.
By Julian, maybe. Yeah. Kira thanks them, and Garrick rebuffs it, just reminding her that none of them are Starfleet, so they don't actually have careers in jeopardy, just their lives.
Yeah. That is a nice
all we can do is die. We don't have to worry about our jobs.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. Defiant undocks, and Cisco orders Worf to demand they return or tractor beam them. Worf begins to and is immediately beamed away. And Cisco assumes this was all part of Worf's plan. And he's like, well, Worf must be on the Defiant now. But Troy's just like, no, actually, Worf was surprised by that.
Yeah.
And then the assault commences, and like everyone's attacking the station, and it gets pretty nuts. There's crazy action scenes inside the station, outside the station. Yeah. It's pretty nuts. And then Omega Squad just like shows up to the bridge, and they're just like, we'll help.
Yeah.
Which is funny because they don't do anything.
Not really.
Like,
no.
They help defend the inside of the station, and like one of them gets phasered, but they don't have any special plan like you think they're gonna. Or
it all seems built around this Omega Squad, which this doesn't really seem to matter. It just seems like a way to make this crossover for the sake of this event they're doing.
Yeah, sake of the telepathy war.
Yes.
So that was the end of that comic. Now it's Day of Honor, which is Death of Honor on here. Yes. But I think it's actually called Day of Honor on the inside.
Yes.
Worf beams aboard the Defiant. They detect only 30 Jem'Hadar warships coming. And to them, they're like, well, that's not very many. And that's, the station could probably maybe deal with that alone without fleets. And then they also discover Nog. And then Dukat comes on screen. He threatens the Defiant with destruction. And Kira gives Worf command of the Defiant, even though he is the normal commander. But she does outrank him on the station. The station is taking heavy fire, but the shields are holding when 12 more Cardassian ships come out of warp. So the odds are getting stacked against them. Cisco accepts the help of Omega Squad. He's like, all right, you can help. But again, they don't do anything.
No, not really. Like you said,
they
find a few people to beam aboard, and that's about it.
Yeah, exactly. And the station is about to be boarded. Martok is waiting in cloak, like letting Worf and the Defiant like take all this damage. He's like, nope, wait. Give him a chance for glory.
Hold. Yeah, exactly.
Hold. They're like, seriously, he's about to blow up. He's just like, hold it.
Hold it.
Yeah. Martok's hardcore.
Yeah, totally.
And he also says about Kira, he's like, she fights like an enraged wild she-targ.
Yes, which that was fun.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. Defiant is one shot from destruction, and then Worf yells, ramming speed, like in First Contact, the movie. That was a great moment.
Yes.
Kira then tries to take command from Worf to stop him from killing them all. She's like, we can actually still just warp away in cloak. It's like, yeah, but we're basically a disabled ship, and we can run in and destroy an operational flagship. He's like, we have to do it.
Yeah.
Which, in the Klingon sense, you see where he's coming from.
Yeah, makes sense too, as far as a tactical sense.
If it's a numbers game.
Yeah. For sure, 100%.
And then Martok's fleet does decloak just in time. He's like,
I got you.
You had your chance for
that
glory.
Martok. What a joker.
This is such a funny way to go about that battle. But then they take heavy fire, and Martok ship's like about to have a core breach. And then there's again more crazy action inside and outside the station. Cisco leaves a final log, and he's just like, everyone performed admirably. Give them, anyone who survives, give them commendations and all this sort of stuff. And he's like, also like, the admiral's acting weird. I don't know why he wants these kids to die so bad.
Yeah, which is never really answered in this comic. I mean, I'm guessing you had to keep reading Starfleet to figure it out, but
yeah, I guess so. Which I'm glad it didn't have too much to do with the story, but it was a nice little log. Nog was able to beam Martok and his bridge crew aboard, but the rest of his crew explodes.
Yeah. He seems oddly okay with that. He's like, not bothered.
Worf's pissed about it. Worf's like, hey, Garrick, don't make light of this situation. Klingons just died.
People are dead.
And then Dukat gets his ship online first, though, and is about to destroy the Defiant when Tomaluk and the Romulans arrive. Tomaluk again. Romulans love to show up just in time.
That's right.
At this point in Deep Space Nine,
it does feel very much like near the end of the series, like where this all takes place.
Yeah, and this kind of stuff was like happening a lot. It's like the attack we didn't see.
Yeah. Was the last 7 episodes of the series are all one big storyline, or is it 7 or 8 of Star Trek?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It feels like it would have fit within all that. Maybe so. Yeah, it was a lot. So wrapping up every plot line with everything,
And they do wrap it up tight here. So like, it could be that battle we didn't see. The Dominion retreats immediately, which is where you could say this is the battle that didn't happen because it didn't end up with anyone being obliterated or anything. And then Tomaluk's boasting and taunting Worf. Worf's just like, all right, you can tow us back to deep space.
Yeah, I like that.
It's like, we'll never be allies or nothing.
Yeah, but you can tow us.
Yeah,
and they do surmise that this was some kind of a distraction tactic, right? That he had something else going on, and that's why they were less people coming through, or that they didn't send that many people to attack the station. It was all a distract.
Yeah, it was. And Tomluk's just like, so what do you think they were trying to distract you from? And they're just like, I don't know.
Once again, never gets answered.
Never gets answered. But an interesting kind of mystery.
It's hanging out with that in the Firewind. They're out somewhere. Those 2 plot lines are hanging out together out in the wormhole somewhere.
So, they defended the station, at least all they had to do, and the Admiral takes his son away to be executed. But the Omega Squad members who were injured get to stay in sickbay.
Yes.
For now, the Admiral.
Yeah, right.
I'll be back to kill them later.
Which doesn't come up again either.
No.
So, yeah. A lot of weird plot points, a lot of things.
I didn't need to see that Admiral again. He sucked.
No. Seemed unneeded. I mean, like I said, I just don't like the shoehorning all these other storylines into the storyline that I'm following over.
Yeah. Cisco doesn't accept the resignation of his pirates. They were all going to resign. So it's like, we betrayed you. I understand. He's just like, no, you're not getting off that easily. Now get out of my sight.
Which is such a cop out too. It's like, I do want to look at you, but I'm not firing you. Get out of here.
But then this issue ends with a nice thing. He's just like, Worf is leaving a log, and he's like, something I should have learned about captains serving on the Enterprise, and I learned from this captain is it's equally as good attacking the things you don't like or your enemies as it is defending the things you love. He's like, those are equal things.
Yeah.
Which is what sums up Cisco's perspective of not wanting to do the preemptive attack. He's just like, we stay here and we defend the things we love.
I feel
so that was an interesting way to sum up the episode.
I feel like in this whole series, like all 15 episodes, there's not a lot that really focuses on Cisco. He's just sort of there, but there's no real stories that center around him specifically.
Yeah.
And even the bits with him and with Cal and other things are just sort of like brushed off and not like really deeply went into. So, I mean, I feel like Cisco's such a great character, and I feel as if the series had continued, we probably would have got more of that, but it was just sort of seemed odd that, out of 15 issues, we get one that focuses on Garrick before we get on one that focuses on Cisco.
What grade did you give this one?
I don't know. I'm really, really deterred. I don't want to give it an F because that's real bad, but I'm really deterred by the whole crossover thing the telepathy war that I didn't have a frame of reference for or care about at all. And I really hate when comics do that. So like C.
Okay. This is the one that, on first reading, I actually gave an A+.
Really? I thought you would have given it
I liked the Martok thing he was doing. I liked basically everything around that didn't involve the Omega Squad. I liked all the other stuff. I liked that
I guess
But,
I focused heavily on that because it seemed to be such a central part to this. Which didn't seem to matter at all. No,
upon this review, though, I do feel like I like the Lou Oksana one better. So I'm gonna have to give them both A pluses.
That's fine. That's totally fine.
Yeah. The Lou Oksana one a little better upon second consideration.
Right on.
You make a good point about the Omega Squad.
I just hated them so much.
Anywhere.
I didn't know them. I didn't know anything about them. I didn't care.
No.
It was just like every time they showed up, I was just like, let's get back to the main story.
Maybe I'll swap those. I'm gonna take this one down to an A and put my A plus on the Lou Oksana. Okay. That really was the best story. I agree here, but this is my show.
That's right. You can do whatever you want.
Exactly. All right, so we got 2 single issues left, and they both have pretty epic covers.
Right.
By this comic, or this Tribble dies,
which is a very which was that thing in comics in the 90s was very prominent. The
She-Hulk by this comic.
She-Hulk did it, or Rip Up Your X-Men comics. Think of Skrull Kill Crew did it with the Skrull's head with the shotgun on it, and so they will kill the Skrull. Yeah, well, I'm a big Grant
Kill
Morrison
Crew's
fan,
a deep
so
cut.
I'm a Grant Morrison fan, a big one. So even his obscure stuff is there. Then that one, and then there's a couple others I think that did similar things. So that was a trope that was used quite a bit at that time period.
Well, this one has my favorite title of all of them.
Yes.
Nobody knows the Tribble I've seen.
I'm a sucker for a good pun.
Nobody knows my sorrow.
I'm a sucker for a good pun.
Yep.
Always have been. There used to be a store near here called Miss Fancy Plants. That was my favorite name for a story ever. So and somebody else bought it and they changed it, but I thought the name was great.
Yeah, should have kept that. Should have bought the name.
Damn right.
So this is a funny one. There are Tribbles infesting the station, which just happens because of the one they brought back in the Trials and Tribulations episode.
Exactly. Which is one of my favorite episodes of the series, so it's kind of fun that there's something tied into that. Yeah.
And you always wonder what happened to that Tribble because all of a sudden there's a bunch on the bar and everything.
Yeah.
But you never see how they cleared it up.
No, you just assume they
Quark's there bullshitting about Worf. He's like, Worf was here, like murdering like Tribbles by the dozens with guns and everything. And Odo's like, I would have known if there was guns going off. He's like, there's no way that happened. He's just like, oh, you just weren't here. You didn't see it. Like,
you didn't know.
Quark's just saying stuff about Worf for no reason. It was pretty funny. There's some funny Quark stuff in this one.
Yes, a little bit.
Yeah. The crew wonders about the Klingon Tribble thing. Like it's Chief, Bashir, Dax, and Odo, and Morn sitting there.
Yes.
Yeah.
You gotta keep Morn.
Yeah, you got to. He never shuts up, but he doesn't talk a lot in this one.
That's true.
He says. So, and Chief's just like, gather around. I know the truth of this story. You know?
Yeah, that's a better Chief. That's good.
Yeah. Right.
Chief's come back around.
Redeemed. He says, Klingons used to be a softer society and they had Tribbles as pets. But the Romulans saw this as a weakness and attacked Konos, releasing the Klingons' warrior spirit.
Yeah, which made them grow ridgeheads. They didn't have that before. Yeah, they also try to surmise as to why Klingons look different in the past as to why they look different.
Because this is before the Enterprise episode that explains all of that.
Right.
That Enterprise 3-parter with the augments. So this is like, they're trying to like do that.
Trying to shoehorn the two things into one that the Tribbles and the Klingons looking like they do now are connected.
For a single issue, this one's got a lot going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of silly. I do like the story, the idea of everyone sitting around a table telling stories. Like, I'm a huge fan of Batman the animated series and the Almost Got Him episode where they're all talking about how they almost got Batman. Like that's one of the best episodes, and it kind of felt a little like that. But some of the stories they told were really dumb. Like that O'Brien.
It's great.
Their warrior spirits just activate and they suddenly grow ridge heads and they're like warriors.
Like, that's why the Klingons hate each other.
Yeah,
it's the Tribble War.
And then like the Klingons hated that they had they had a weakness like that because they love Tribbles so much, so they just wipe them out. And because they start wiping them out, the Tribbles start breeding faster, which is why they breed the way they do.
Chiefs had an answer for everything.
Fits it all.
Like, but that's why they breed faster. He's just like, it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
But they don't buy it, even though it was a pretty good story.
Yeah.
And Julian's just like, no, but actually I know the truth because I did this medical paper that kind of shed some light on this kind of stuff. Like from the cellular and the genetic level and that sort of thing. So Julian says it's all because after the TOS Tribble episode, Scotty beamed all the Tribbles onto Koloth's ship. which caused a
Right.
reaction, like an allergic reaction or something, which gave them their foreheads.
Yes.
And his was the worst. Like, that was the stupidest story.
Yeah, it was
That's
dumb.
pretty much as far as his got. He's just like, no,
Yeah.
they just beamed them over there.
Yeah, and had
And-
some kind of viral infection that just spread
Yeah.
amongst the Klan Empire. They gave them all forehead ridges.
Yeah.
Which is
And
why
he's
they
like,
hate
no,
them.
that's why before that time you didn't see any with forehead
Yeah,
ridges. Like, that's
right.
His was the one that tried to explain the forehead ridges
Yeah.
the most, I guess. So then Jadzia is like, that's dumb, and she knows the truth, and she tells the story. Hers is the craziest story.
Yeah, it's like
She's talked
Indiana
about-
Jones.
Oh my
It's
god!
like-
So there's a trio of Klingons that do have forehead ridges, and one of her hosts, who's not one we've heard of before, so
Yeah.
she's totally making it
He's
up.
like an ancient like explorer.
Yeah,
with
like
this, treasure
Enjara
hunter.
Dax or something.
Yeah,
Yeah, totally Indiana Jones.
who's wearing a full Indiana Jones outfit. Like,
and he has
in the future.
Molor's mystical bat'leth.
Yeah, right.
And then he meets these Klingons, and they work together, and they turn a bunch of, using Molor's bat'leth, they turn a bunch of tribbles into a Trojan tribble and hide
Right.
inside, so that they can be taken inside and sneak attack their enemies. And then once in there, they do attack, and then they turn the Trojan tribble into little tribbles again.
Yeah, it was all
Which-
little tribbles that were like just merged into one big one.
Yeah.
And
And
at
then-
this point, Cleons liked tribbles so much that they were just really taken with this big purring tribble that they brought it
Yeah.
in. Yeah, which is so dumb.
Yeah. Yeah, hers was the worst. So that was her story, basically. And then again, the foreheads, I guess, spread because of the trio that had the foreheads.
Yeah, they were like they heralded it and everybody loved it.
Yeah.
And spread DNA across the galaxy, I guess.
So then Odo's is like, all your stories are crap because Morn told me the real story
Yes.
earlier today. So why don't you tell them? Which is just like, haha, you guys are stuck here for hours now while Morn talks, and then Odo leaves. And
Yeah.
that's the end.
Yeah,
the end
it was fine. It wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't give it an F, I guess, but I definitely give it a C. It was okay.
I gave it a
just-
B because I thought it would be hilarious. Just the table scene, like
Yeah,
that could
no,
have
I
been a
agree. The conceit would be good if they had shown that episode, or even a similar idea where maybe some event happened and it's almost like Rashomon, where each of them are remembering the event in a different way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you don't know what story, like everyone is the hero of their story, but looks different than everybody else's. Like that idea would be really interesting. So I do think the core concept is neat. I just feel as though the fact that they focused on that Tribble episode is like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't need Trojan tribbles and
No,
Julian's dumb story. And
It was silly. It just
Yeah.
would have been a fun little scene for me. But I gave it a B. I understand it could be in a C for sure.
yeah, no, I understand. it
Too,
could be
too
B.
silly and funny to be an F.
Yeah, agreed.
So then we come to the last one, which is
Old Garrick.
Requiem of Obsidian. Garrick's
Which is a
having
great
some
title.
guilt issues yet again. Yeah, it is. From his past, and it starts off with him just stabbing this lady in the chest.
Yes,
But
the
just from his
past, it's-
past. Yeah.
yes.
And
Because she was
He's
a
also-
spy for the Obsidian Order. And then
yeah,
the
or a
Obsidian Order
courier
started.
for them or something.
Yeah, and they started distrusting telepaths, so they
Yeah.
wanted her dead. So his mission was to kill her.
Yeah, she's from a telepathic species, and then he starts seeing her around the station, so he's freaking out about that. And then he has like a freak out and like starts hitting people in the bar and stuff because he's just like freaking out about the whole situation. But then
Yeah.
it turns out his like brain is also deteriorating,
Yes.
and it's gonna be rapid. Like Julian's like, you're gonna die in hours or days, and I
Mhm.
don't know why. And then he sees this woman again, and he chases after her, and she's just like, no, I'm the sister of the person you killed.
Yeah.
He's like, so you're here for revenge. She's like, no, actually, I'm here to help you.
And it was
She didn't like the way her sister lived and that type of thing.
yeah, and the
She
sister
didn't want to
when
be
the
sucked
sister
into the cycle of violence and that sort of thing.
and when the sister died, she put some kind of brain hex on him that didn't
Yes.
that because of the other brain hex he had from before didn't really activate until they got rid of that brain hex in the episode where they did. And then this one took
the wire.
over. Yeah, and then this one took over and was slowly killing him, and then she basically
Yeah.
comes to save him by sacrificing her life.
Yeah, and that's basically the whole episode.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't. I like the idea. I love Garrick. He's one of my favorite characters. He's one of the
Oh,
most
yeah.
complicated.
Mhm.
And I mean, you can retcon this as much as you want. I know Andrew Robinson has, but like one of the early sort of not necessarily binary characters, like he seemed bisexual. And I know Andrew Robinson has said in interviews he played him that way. And
Well, he wrote a book
right
called A
I never
Stitch
read
of
the book.
Time.
Yeah.
We cover it on the podcast because it's fantastic, and he definitely portrays him that way. He portrays Garrick in that book as someone who's just attracted to impressiveness.
Yeah, makes sense.
So,
Perfectly makes sense.
Or intrigue.
Yeah, I mean, him and Julian always had a kind of
Hmm.
friendship relationship on Julian's side, but it seemed like it could have been more to Garrick. He certainly said a lot of things that seemed to go that way. And it's weird because Robinson's not an actor I was super familiar with. I only really knew him from Deep Space Nine until I watched Hellraiser not too long ago, and then I was like, oh, there he is. Yeah, it's weird seeing him in.
And also Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Right. And recently, I'm sure you may have covered this on the show, the documentary "Those Left Behind" that they did, where they talk. Yeah, me too. I thought it was great, and like he was in that quite a bit. And it's a real crime to me that we're not going to get another season of this show done the way the writers wrote it out. It sounded so amazing.
It did.
Especially now that Odo's gone too, which sucks. Renee Auberjonois. But I liked it. There was no episode. I mean, there are episodes that brushed up about Garrick's time in Obsidian Order. There were no real episodes that really showed him in his glory of being an Obsidian assassin, which I thought was really cool to see depicted.
And that scene too in the issue where Zial walks in, he was about to say those people I killed, and he's like, those people I fired.
Yeah. I like that too. And then they just there's this little moment of understanding between him and Julian. I did feel like he was way more open in this than he would be in this show. Like he's kind of giving off a lot of details that he wouldn't normally just espouse.
Without the obfuscation. He's just like, I killed these people, Julian. How do you think about that? And Julian's just like, well, I guess that I'm not surprised.
Well, it's weird because the whole show he's dancing around that stuff, and then all of a sudden he's just like, I kill people. It's like
maybe it was the deterioration.
Yeah, let's go with that. That's some good headcanon.
So that brings us to the end. Any final conclusions?
I give this one in B.
Yeah, me too. Would have been an all right B plot.
Would have been an all right B plot. I feel like there definitely would have been, if that was an episode, there would have been something else going on in the episode for sure. It wouldn't have just been that. Probably would have been, I don't know, O'Brien and Kiko having a fight or something. But
well, I thank you for joining me for this first contact.
Thank you so much. I know this was
long review that may have gone over an hour and a half longer than I told you it would.
It's quite all right. I had a good time. This is fun.
Everyone should listen to this.
Yeah, please do. It's graphichistories.com, I believe.
The interviews are really good.
Oh, thanks, man.
And so are the other ones. The informative.
Yeah, it's been a little while since I've done those anymore, but I appreciate it, man. I'll definitely have you on a future episode. We can do this again.
Oh, that would be real fun.
Learn about the origins of Devin Skellern.
Davin is actually the pronunciation there.
Oh, thank you. That's good too.
No
because I looked at the spelling of your name, and I met you years ago in person, and I was like, I feel like it should be that, but I don't want to.
It's Celtic for David or something like that.
Makes sense.
But as for us, you can email us at locutorsofcheck@gmail.com. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Oh, tomorrow night. This was only our initial collaboration.
Right.
Tomorrow night at this very same time, 8 p.m., tune in for X-Rated, the X-Men animated review show. Going to be co-hosted by myself and Andre.
Yes, this is only the beginning of a beautiful friendship, David.
Exactly. I'm looking forward to this. That's I get to watch X-Men animated and talk about it. It's going to be good.
Yeah, I'm very excited to do a deep dive through that as well, because I have nothing but fond memories about that series. So.
Morph.
Morph. We'll get justice for Morph. Justice for Morph.
Thanks again.
Oh, thank you, man. It was a pleasure. Great talking Star Trek.
Signing off.
Right, bye-bye.